This is The Rich Eisen Show.
Jim Trotter here on The Rich Eisen Show.
Live from The Rich Eisen Show studio in Los Angeles.
When you go to the league office, if you include the COO, there are only two people of color. The two men making decisions in the newsroom are both white. So if the league is talking about how it is about racial equality and whatnot, the numbers seem to reflect otherwise.
Today's guests, former Green Beret, Nate Boyer, Super Bowl champion receiver, Anquan Boldin, plus senior writer for Sports Illustrated, Chris Mannix. And now, it's Rich Eisen.
Okay, everybody, we're here on a Thursday in Los Angeles, California, first week of June 2020. We say good morning to everybody out there in our wormhole, all the 454s who watch us every day on youtube.com/Rich Eisen Show. We apologize for the technical difficulties yesterday. We were talking about best sequels. We forgot about part 2 of the Rich Eisen Show that you posted yesterday, Chris Brockman. We fired up those jets right in the middle of Ed Reed having a conversation with us.
Yeah, right.
And good to see you on this good day.
Hey,
and same to you, Mike Del Tufo.
Good morning.
And we may have some talks of sequels again today.
Yesterday was Tom Hanks.
Well, we also talked about some great sequels of all time as well.
We're going to get into it.
Okay, we're going to get into it here on this show. Hello to our Sirius XM listeners every single day from 12 to 3 Eastern. We've got 2 guests joining us once NBCSN hits. That's will be Anquan Boldin and Chris Mannix, by the way, is going to be 2 Eastern time. Anquan Boldin, a guy who's got Hall of Fame credentials in his time in the National Football League. And I'm sure he told some teams that wanted him to keep playing, I'm not playing anymore because I need to focus on issues that's going on in the world that affects me and my community. And he co-founded the Players Coalition. And he's going to be joining us right in the middle of our second hour of this program. And Nate Boyer is going to be first up. And I think it will be obvious why in a moment if you can't put 2 and 2, those 2 things together. Let's talk Drew Brees, folks. Let's talk Drew Brees. Lots going on with Drew Brees in the last 24 hours.
Sure is.
And in this cancel culture where people take folks and just erase them and everything that they've done right off the planet because of what they've said or how it's difficult to square the circle with what they've said. There's many people that wish to cancel Drew Brees, and I don't think Drew Brees is going to be canceled. Let me just say this about Drew right off the top here. I have known him for, gosh darn it, I guess since I started at NFL Network in 2003. I've been around him and his family, been around him and his community, him in the community. I hosted a charity event for him when he was with the San Diego Chargers back in the day. I've never heard him utter a racist word, never watched him act in any way, shape, or form where he is racist, where he does treat anybody differently because of the color of their skin. I've never seen anything like that, ever. Never sensed it, never thought it, never thought he had it in him, never thought he had that bone in his body. And I know some might say, well, you want him on your show, Rich. Well, he's been on the show. He's always been very open to joining this program, and that may affect the way that I look at him, you could think, but it doesn't. It doesn't. So count me among the many that were sorely disappointed. I was shocked as well. Surprised when he, if you can tee it up for those who may not have seen it, he went on, I guess, a Yahoo Business.
Finance.
Yahoo Finance.
Yahoo Finance. Yeah.
Okay. The exclamation point is silent, right, in the Yahoo?
Correct.
Okay. He went on the Yahoo Finance program and had this exchange.
Well, I will never agree with anybody disrespecting the flag of the United States of America or our country. Let me just tell you what I see or what I feel when the national anthem is played and when I look at the flag of the United States. I envision my 2 grandfathers who fought for this country during World War II one in the Army and one in the Marine Corps, both risking their lives to protect our country and to try to make our country and this world a better place. So every time I stand with my hand over my heart, looking at that flag and singing the national anthem, that's what I think about. And in many cases, it brings me to tears, thinking about all that has been sacrificed, not just those in the military, but for that matter, those throughout the civil rights movements of the 60s, and everyone and all that has been endured by so many people up until this point. And is everything right with our country right now? No, it's not. We still have a long way to go. But I think what you do by standing there and showing respect to the flag with your hand over your heart is it shows unity. It shows that we are all in this together. We can all do better, and that we are all part of the solution.
Now, that was in response to a question from the host of this program about what happens if players kneel during the national anthem again, as Colin Kaepernick did, based on what's going on in this world. What would the NFL do? And that was Drew's response. And yes, it is always great to call for unity, but that response is wholly unacceptable. He has every right to say it. I mean, in the same way that everybody else has a right to say what they want to say here in this country. He has every right to express it. He has every right to believe it. But in his standing in the NFL and in his locker room and in his community of New Orleans, that's not an acceptable answer. And the reason why, you could seek out the response from many of his colleagues within his own locker room. Malcolm Jenkins in particular was very emotional. And Cameron Jordan speaking to Mike Silver of NFL Media Group, you could seek that out. Michael Thomas, who had a record-setting season catching all the passes from him and Teddy Bridgewater and Taysom Hill. He don't know no better was the tweet that we just showed up there. Many other profane responses. Ed Reed, who might have said it on this show if his phone hadn't dived out. We don't care if you don't agree, and whoever else. How about that? Mike Thomas wrote back to Drew Brees. There were also other responses from white players in the NFL, responses from African-American, Latino members of the New Orleans community, pointing out that that's not acceptable. Wendell Pierce, who's as diehard a Saints celebrity fan that we've ever had on this program, go seek out his thread on Twitter. As Michael Wilbon also said on Pardon the Interruption, we're showing Emmanuel Sanders' tweet calling it ignorant. He's a new member of the New Orleans Saints, pointing out that there were black Americans who fought alongside Drew Brees' grandfather and came home to considerable racism. The GI Bill let down thousands upon thousands of African American fighters who fought bravely alongside white soldiers in World War II. I mean, we could go on and on and on and on about how the word ignorant, in terms of history, it is. But here's what really particularly disturbed me, let me down, disappointed me. It's that by saying what Brees said in response to the question about what happens if players begin to kneel again, it's as if he did not hear a single word of what was said back in 2017. When Kaepernick was out of football and players were kneeling in response to that and kneeling during the national anthem a year after that Kaepernick was doing so, didn't at all either hear, absorb, understand, appreciate, listen, that the kneeling during the national anthem had nothing to do with kneeling on the anthem or the flag. It had to do with calling attention to whatever people thought about the anthem or the flag and what it represents in terms of equality. That is something that we need to call attention to, that it's not equal for everybody. And thus the flag doesn't mean the same thing to everyone. As Aaron Rodgers said yesterday on his Instagram, it was never about the anthem, never about the flag. And we all knew it at the time. After President Trump said that all players who knelt should be thrown out of the league, and he used the word sons of bitches in response to them, players had begun to subside in kneeling during the national anthem and when the flag was unfurled prior to a game. And that totally inflamed the situation to the point where players were rightfully outraged and were expressing that's exactly what we're talking about, that sort of intolerance, that sort of one-sided point of view as to what equality means in this country. Not equal to everyone. Players were all like, that's what we're talking about, and began kneeling en masse. I went on NFL Network that next morning next to the rest of us on game day morning and decided, I remember driving to work that day thinking, what am I going to say today? I have to say something, even though I'm a white, 47-year-old Jewish guy. Driving, I had to say something. I had a microphone on me. I just felt I had to say something, and I decided to directly address the camera as I'm doing right now. And I said to the freshly minted president of the United States that, just in case you're wondering why the players are kneeling, let's find out why the players are kneeling. They're not kneeling to protest the military. They're not kneeling to protest those who fight for our freedom. As a matter of fact, they're enjoying the freedom that's been provided by those who fought for it to peacefully protest and bring attention to what is going on in their world, to let everyone know that what this moment represents isn't equal for all, and let's do something about it. We all knew it at the time. So for 3 years later, Drew Brees to answer a question about what if people kneel again in that manner is so beyond the pale. It boggles the mind to, even in this moment when we're seeing protests be violent, to essentially say now the peaceful protest that happens during the national anthem is something I can never agree with. What would we prefer? Somebody taking a knee in peaceful protest or violent protest? Honestly, I can't believe I have to say this into a microphone 3 years later, after this was so obvious to anyone in the NFL. For sure, it might not be to people who weren't paying specific attention to the actual conversations being had in the NFL, where the conversations that the players wanted to have in the NFL, that others were ignoring or using for their personal politics. Like the vice president of the United States at the time going to an Indianapolis Colts game where we absolutely, all of us knew a player on the field was absolutely going to protest peacefully in this manner, in a manner in which the president of and the vice president currently say they are for peaceful protests, that actually was happening on the field. We all knew he was going to witness that. And he got up and turned around and walked out. So you're either up for having the conversation and support peaceful protests, or you're not. That's what sorely disappointed me, because Brees is such a team guy. He's a team-oriented guy. He is totally invested in what his brethren are thinking or crying about or loving or needing or wanting, because he's as much of a human being as they are, and he understands that. But to immediately snap into, I stand at attention because my family fought, as if no other families of color fought. And I understand he must know that. And I think that's why when he apologized today and he says it sickens him that people think this of him. I think that's what he's referring to, is that his words are like, you know, that people of color, of course he knows. He does. But the fact that there's been no absorbing of the conversation of 3 years ago, even today, in light of everything that's going on right now, that's the most disappointing, for me, aspect. And I use words like disappointing as opposed to what you're hearing from others like Ed Reed and Malcolm Jenkins. I'm white, okay? I'm a white guy. I cannot imagine, I can only imagine what a person of color
We saw it in some of those videos.
would say. And so today's team meeting that's going down will be quite something, I imagine, in New Orleans. That will be the mother of all Zooms. Or hopefully they can put the team in the Microsoft team meeting there, because I can't imagine what it's going to be like. And I know Sean Payton said that this team meeting was planned 2 weeks ago as a 21st century moment. There is responding to a Shooter McGavin tweet.
The parody account.
I know, but you could see the sensitivity here. He's just like, hey, this is not something that we just threw together. But even if they had, it would be totally understandable. As the coach, he's got an issue within his locker room here, unlike one that I've seen in a long time. So that's why we're going to have Nate Boyer call in just a minute here, because Nate's the one who, as you know, has had several tours of duty overseas, as he would go back and forth between being a walk-on on the University of Texas football team and then on the front lines of fighting for our country.
Yeah, he'd go back and forth between seasons.
Over and over again. And Nate was the guy, and it's been 3 years or 4 years, because it was in 2016 when Steve Weich, my colleague from the NFL Network and NFL Media Group, went to a preseason game in Santa Clara and noticed Colin Kaepernick sitting during the national anthem, which apparently Kaepernick had begun doing prior to Steve Weich noticing this. And Steve went up to Kaepernick after the game and asked him about it, and Kaepernick told him, yeah, that's on purpose, and explained why he's doing it, because he wanted to bring focus to all of these issues. He didn't say, screw the military. I hate the United States of America. I hate my country. No, he hates what's happening in his country, and was using his First Amendment rights to do this. And he's doing it in a peaceful manner. And he has every right to say it, Laura Ingraham, even though he doesn't need to shut up and throw a football or shut up and dribble, as you told LeBron and Kevin Durant should do when they spoke up. But now Drew Brees says something like this, and he does have every right to say it and has every right to believe it. But he's a person, according to Laura, who I used to know years ago, and who I don't recognize anymore, quite honestly. But Drew has every right to say it. I wonder why he's got every right to say it, and he's a person that should be listened to, and LeBron and Kevin Durant should shut up and dribble. I just wonder what's the difference between these goats of their respective sports. I'm just trying to put my finger on it. Wonder what that could be.
Yeah.
So Colin Kaepernick was sitting, and then one individual counseled him to kneel instead. And that person was Nate Boyer, who's joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show right now. How are you, sir?
How you doing, Rich?
Nate, I got to tell you, man, world is crazy, and I seek counsel in you. I'm not going to lie. And I know you seek counsel in others, and you try to give counsel to others, and you need counsel yourself. But I guess that's why we're all joining together here, is you do all the time with Glaze for merging vets and players. I mean, my gosh, if we're not merging this more than ever, it's now merging society. So let's walk through this here, because apparently we need a tutorial again about why Kaepernick was doing what he was doing and what he was doing it to bring attention to. So how did you get first hooked up with Colin Kaepernick, Nate?
I think the difference you were talking about. I think well, Drew plays football and LeBron plays basketball.
Yeah, that could be that. Yeah, that's true.
Okay,
that could be that, Nate. It could be that. Okay. You know, as we're constantly in search for that sort of thing. But how did you first get hooked up with Colin Kaepernick?
Yeah, this was the preseason of NFL preseason of 2016. So I think important context for that is it's a couple of months out of the election. You know, which is we're in another election year, which is interesting. And obviously it was Team Hillary versus Team Trump. And our country had already experienced, quite a bit of division leading up to this moment anyway. I felt like we were already being kind of pulled apart, which is frustrating, as I think almost any person who served in the military will tell you, regardless of their politics. Most of us we want unity, man. We want our country to be together. We want them to support us and feel that. And it didn't feel like that in our society at the time. And, and then Colin started sitting on the bench during the national anthem, protesting police brutality, social inequality, social injustice, racial inequality. And, he made that pretty clear. But, of course, with social media becoming now the mainstream media, it doesn't matter because people see an image or take a little soundbite or something, and it's just the narrative changes. And 3.5 years later now, as we can see, that the narrative, it's still hard to stay on task here and keep the narrative what it's supposed to be. Keep it real. So anyway, I wrote this open letter to Colin, explaining my experiences in the military, explaining why I feel the way that I do during the anthem and why I stand with my hand in my heart and feel a certain way, but also, like, I don't know what it's like to feel like you feel, and I'll never pretend, for me to pretend to feel what it's like to be a person of color in this country is as ignorant as someone telling me they know what it's like to go to war that, has never served a day in the military. And so I think it resonated with Colin, and, he reached out to me and he wanted to meet. So I went down to San Diego before the final preseason game of 2016, and it's military appreciation night because 9/11 was approaching. There's a flyover, Navy SEALs jumping into the stadium. There's this Navy band on the field with an African American man going to sing the national anthem, and this whole thing is going on. And Colin, and I are chatting a few hours before the game in the hotel lobby. And, we talk about some of the things I just discussed, like both of our backgrounds, why he feels the way that he feels, why I feel the way that I feel. But, more than anything, I was just trying to listen to where he was coming from with all this. And he was pretty clear on that. And I understood. And he's also very clear that he's in saying that, look, I've committed to not standing until I see things change. I'm not going to. And I said, okay, I respect that. I mean, at the end of the day, when I took an oath to defend the Constitution, that includes the First Amendment and freedom of speech, and everybody that served in the military, that's what we fought for. We don't have to agree with it. We don't have to like it all the time, but we fought for these rights, and so I respect that. And he asked me at the end of this conversation, do you think there's another way I could demonstrate, I could show my protest without offending people in the military? And I said, no. There's nothing you can do that's not going to offend some people. And I said, even if you stood at this point, you're going to offend some people. People are going to think that, oh, you gave up on your protest. You're not committed. You're not a man of conviction. So, I said, the only other thing I could think of to me, and I don't speak for the military or the veteran community or anybody but myself, to me, I think being alongside your teammates is the most important thing. And if that's the case and you're not going, and you said you're not going to stand, I think the only other option you really have is taking a knee. And it's, people take a knee to pray and propose to their wives, and, we'll take a knee in front of a fallen brother's grave to pay respect in the military. It's a common sign of respect. And he agreed that was more powerful. He asked me if I'd join him. I told him, I want to stand because of the way that I feel. And I don't want to kneel, but I'll stand next to you because I support what you're doing, and you're right. And I also want to see this country be better and get better. And so I did that. And that was the first night he ever knelt. And obviously it's pretty cool today, this last week, to see a lot of people in the community that don't look like him, law enforcement officers take a knee at times. And it's been a unifying symbol in a lot of ways, which is ironic because a lot of people saw that as the complete opposite when it first happened.
Nate Boyer here on the Rich Eisen Show, Green Beret, and also co-founder of Merging Vets and Players with Jay Glazer, right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Did at any point Colin say, I don't like the military to you?
No.
Never.
No.
Right? So, you know what? I guess you heard my sigh. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you were standing next to him that night, right?
Yes.
Okay. And what did he say anything to you after the anthem? Look at you. Did you share a moment? What happened after that moment?
Yeah, I mean, to be completely honest, he was nervous going into it, and so was I. And I understand his nerves. You know what I mean? Mine, I think a little bit less. I understood it at the time. I think I was just like, didn't know what to expect. I also was like worried about my brotherhood, the special forces community specifically, because more than anything, besides probably my parents, I hate disappointing them and having them feel like I'm not representing them in a good way. So I was nervous about that, and that's kind of a selfish thing because it's not that big a deal. It's not like that. That's not it's not the same as like why he's taking the knee. That was just a selfish, like I want people to like me. But I was nervous about that. And then to hear some of the people in the stands boo, and I heard that. That's what I heard over everything else. And that wasn't the majority of people booing. It probably wasn't even that many people. But that's what I focused on, and that bothered me. That bothered me a lot more than anybody taking a knee. You know what I mean? And, and then after it happened, after the anthem was done, he stood up. He gave me 5. He had a bit of a nervous smile on his face. Right. Maybe it was because he was starting that night and he's trying to win his job back. I don't know.
Yeah, sure, could be.
But I felt that too, and I was like, man, this is. But I felt proud too. I also felt proud after it was over, and he was like out on the field, and then other players on the team, white, black, doesn't matter. They were coming up to me and shaking my hand, saying nice to meet you, appreciate what you're doing. I had a nice conversation with Torrey Smith, who was on the Niners at the time, and so that was cool. That was very settling for me, and I felt like I belonged on that sideline, in a lot of ways. And anyway, that was the emotions of the day, and I wouldn't change a thing, to be honest.
No, and clearly, what we saw has sparked a conversation. But and again, Drew Brees has apologized for what he said. But the fact that he said what he said yesterday makes it seem like he didn't understand and still doesn't, and I think gives a lot of voice to a lot of people who still do not understand why Colin Kaepernick took a knee. Now we know why he took a knee as opposed to sitting, or at least reminding people of that, since this has been public knowledge for a while and we feel the need to repeat this. But why he took a knee. Why do you think people still have such a difficult time, Nate, coming from obviously a military background that you have, but you also have a football background. You have a background of being around a diverse group. I've seen the Merging Vets and Players meetings. It is a tapestry of veterans from the military as well as sports. Why do you feel this is still not sunk in, why Kaepernick decided to take a knee and what he was trying to bring attention to, even though that's all over the streets of America right now? Nate.
Right. Yeah. I mean, first of all, the veteran community is the most diverse microcosm in the country, as you know, just through seeing the vets at MVP. But it's true. Like we look like everything. We're from everywhere. We believe all kinds of different stuff. But for the most part, we're able to put all that crap aside, and we'll take a bullet for one another, even if we don't like each other. You know what I mean? Or pretty much disagree with everything, and we would never have a beer offline and hang out. But we're still willing to do that, and so that's an important distinction there to make. But and as it pertains to the anthem and the flag, I feel the exact same way Drew Brees does when the song is played and the anthem and the flag is raised, and that's not a bad thing. It's not.
No,
Nate.
I want to say this too.
No, I know.
Nate, I want to say this too. So do I. And then at a stadium when the national anthem is played, and my kids were there, my wife and I, they stand up. They take their hats off. They put their hands over their heart. That's the way I do it. But I would understand if a person next to me took a knee. I would explain to my children. Well, my kids already would know what they're doing because we explain to them what's going on in the world and why Kaepernick did what he did and so on and so forth. But I make them stand up, hand over heart. So I understand, again, why that is. But I also understand why Kaepernick or another individual will be taking a knee during that moment.
Right.
So I'm sorry. I just wanted to interrupt right there. And
no. Please
go on, Nate. This is a conversation,
No, but it's important. It's important because a lot of people feel that way. And I don't want people to think that, the last thing I want is anybody to feel nervous or like they're wrong for feeling patriotic, because I feel it big time, and I love this country, and I do believe it's the greatest country in the world. Doesn't mean we can't do a hell of a lot better, but I do believe that, and I feel those same things that he felt. But at the same time, it is not just because I feel it. It doesn't mean everybody just should or has to, or their experiences are even close to the same as mine that would lead them to feel, even a semblance of that same way. And so if somebody doesn't feel that way, I'm going to do everything in my power so that they do. That's it. Like I want everybody to feel like I feel. I don't want anybody to do anything ever out of obligation. That's just not my way, and it's not the American way. It shouldn't be. So as it pertains to the narrative, like that's the most frustrating thing to I think a lot of these men, not just in the league, but and women, I should say, people across the country, just human beings. That the what this is all about has been continually hammered home. And it's still, the narrative's still twisted as like, oh, they're disrespecting the flag or they're disrespecting the military. When it's like been clearly stated, that's not what this is about. It's not what this is about. We've seen plenty of signs and symbols throughout our history of, I guess you can call it dissent. You know what I mean? We look back on those things and we're like, wow, that was powerful. What a brave thing to do. Yet in this moment, at this time, for whatever reason, like a lot of people, they just don't want to accept that this is that person's truth, and what this person is trying to do is not a bad thing, not a wrong thing. It's all about it's a patriotic thing, and that's a scary word nowadays too. But it's a patriotic thing to do that, not just because we have the right to protest, but because what's behind that is a belief and a feeling that this country can do better, and that we can be more unified, and then we can be more equal, and that everyone can feel the same type of opportunities that I feel. Because I feel like in this country, I can chase any dream I want. That American dream is we all got our own American dreams, but not everybody feels like it's possible for them, and that's not right. And that's not fair. And just because you do or someone else does or I do doesn't mean that it's so. Just doesn't mean it's so for everybody. And so we just have to acknowledge that and understand that, and then do what we can to listen to everybody and fight for those that don't have it, together. That's the best thing we can do. And it's not an easy thing to do, but we've got to try.
I agree with you, Nate Boyer. I agree with you. When was the last time you spoke with Kaepernick? When was the last time you and he actually connected? Was it that actual night?
No, it's been a couple of years. We talked on and off throughout the season, and then a little bit kind of early the next season when President Trump had the sons of bitches comment and all that. Of course, it stirred up again. I think I'm not even close to like things are now, because that was more just a lot of talk, a lot of social media. Now we're seeing a lot more action, people in the streets, which is great. I love that. Aside from the social distancing stuff,
Right.
Whatever, it is what it is. I think that's what I've always said. Without action behind it, it's just an empty gesture, And Colin's always had plenty of action behind it. Whether I think what he's said and done has been the best way of doing it, doesn't matter, But he's been doing something, and all these players. I haven't seen a player in the league that's spoken out or taken a knee or whatever that's not doing something in the community to address this issue, which is important. So that should be for every American, and everybody overseas that's involved in this thing, which is kind of crazy to see. All the continents everywhere. There's something is going on in support of this message, which is really cool. So continued action behind that. And now it's like the next step. It's not just going on a march in the streets. It's like, what are you doing involving your community? Like, how are you, even if it's just one-on-one conversation with somebody and learning, or take it to the next step and, getting involved in policy changes or whatever. Like that's how it happens. And it didn't all start. It started hundreds of years ago. But it's this continued commitment from people like Colin Kaepernick and so many others to kind of lay it all out there and risk something pretty big for them and for a lot of people, to keep the conversation going and the changes to keep coming, because things have changed. Things have changed over hundreds of years. I would never say that things have not changed, and things are. Even since the civil rights movement, things are better, but they're way far away from where they need to be.
Well, and in terms of
got to keep moving forward.
In terms of things changing, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this, Nate. And I know this is somewhat outside of what we're talking about in the Kaepernick and the kneeling. But what do you think of seeing tanks on the streets in American cities? The use of a medical helicopter, as we saw a couple of nights ago in Washington, D.C., to either intimidate or disperse a peaceable assembly, people without names or insignias on uniforms, but in roles of enforcement on the streets. What do you think of that as somebody who's fought overseas, Nate?
It's scary in a lot of ways. And something I think about immediately is when I was at Texas going to college and playing football, I was still in the military. I was in the National Guard, and I was going overseas. I was going to Afghanistan every summer and coming back and going to school and playing football for the 4 years I was there. And if this would have happened during that time, there's a chance I'd have been called up, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'd be in the streets of Austin, Texas, maybe, dressed like one of these people. And doing my job, serving my country, doing what I took the oath to do. And what it's supposed to mean to me is protecting, just like law enforcement's supposed to be, protecting and serving, defending people's rights to protest peacefully and all that, right? But also when there's people looting, when there's people doing things that they shouldn't be doing, you're there to protect against that, of course. But most of those people don't want to be there. They don't want to do that. They don't want to patrol those streets. I don't want military in our streets with tanks. Like, are you nuts? That's the opposite. I want to come home from war and get as far away from that as possible. And I think a lot of these people feel that same way. And so that's a scary thing, and it's tough. And I feel for a lot of them, because that's a very diverse group, as I said earlier too. That group, those people in those uniforms, they don't all think the same way. A lot of them are scared, and I feel for them. But just like in the law enforcement, just like in the NFL, in the military, there are certain people that shouldn't be wearing that uniform. They just shouldn't. They don't do it the right way. They don't represent what that uniform is supposed to represent. They don't represent the flag the way that it's supposed to be represented. And we've got to do what we can in society, in every industry, to get that cleaned up, to get those people out of those positions, especially ones that have a pretty high up position. And so it's on us. It's on all of us to do that, And the fact that this officer Chauvin was even working is just pretty appalling, that he was even working in on the streets And when you see what happened with George Floyd, it's incredibly sad. But when you look at the background and read the record of Officer Chauvin, it's not surprising, and that's bad. That's a bad thing. That's a scary thing. But we've got those people everywhere. We've got them in the military too. We're not all heroes, So I'll be the first one to admit that. And I'm not a hero either. I'm not saying I'm a hero in any way, but like we've got to do a better job as a country, making sure the people on our left and right who we trust with our lives and who are out there to protect us and who are out there to look after us, not just in law enforcement and the military, are those that truly care about America, truly care about everybody equally, and at least as close as they can. And let's just get that cleaned up. Let's get that fixed. We've got a lot of people out of work right now that should be in work, and we've got a lot of people in work right now that shouldn't be.
Nate, what you are is a great American, a great human, man. That's what you are. Vetsandplayers.org to learn more about merging vets and players. You co-founded it along with Jay Glazer because you both realized that there are individuals in sports and in the military who are trying to find purpose once they are done with what they thought their sole purpose on this earth was. And what you guys do, I've seen it. My wife and I have seen it. What I know about you, everyone should know about. Vetsandplayers.org. It's a beautiful, wonderful organization, and I can't thank you enough always for calling in and sharing your thoughts. And I can only imagine, I know you say you're not a hero, brother, but I can only imagine what it's like when you turn on televisions and see peaceful protests, thousands of people, now all over the world, pausing in reflection, taking a knee on the ground. I can only imagine what that must mean for you, to you, and to those you represent. And I say to you, thank you.
Thank you, Rich. I appreciate that. But yeah, I truly believe the veteran community and the athlete community can come together to continue to push this conversation forward and solve a lot of these issues in the country and lead the way, at least, in solving a lot of these issues in the country. Like we're leaders, and we need to act that way even after the uniform comes off.
Nate, you take care of yourself. I'll stay in touch. You do too, please. Okay?
Definitely, Rich. Thank you so much, brother.
You got it at Nate Boyer 37 for those who want to follow Nate on Twitter. I do. You should as well.
100%.
Stuff we talk about here, right? I mean, the stuff that I have no idea how equipped I am to discuss this sort of stuff when I wake up, or I just live life the way that I can or believe or has been instilled in me by my parents, my grandparents, my friends, my wife, her family, you guys, my colleagues at work, who I've worked with, who I've been alongside. Stuart Scott, Michael Irvin, Marshall Falk, Warren Sapp. Naming people of color, obviously, because hey man, the number of times I've learned something from Stuart because my upbringing, being a New York Jew,
totally
was so different from his.
Same.
Whether it was, what is that lyric? And then him turning to me and basically saying, what is that line? I'll tell that story a million times, and I'll tell it again.
It's great.
Yep.
And this is obviously apropos of our relationship and what we were doing, and obviously not even remotely as close to the level of importance of what's happening in our society right now in the discussion arena. But it is indicative of experiences and not knowing the other person's experiences and assuming your experience is the only experience, or your experience is the most prominent experience, and not understanding the others is equally as prominent to them, if not more so than yours. Stuart, as we all know, would have catchphrases from rap music, from the world of hip-hop music, totally lost on me. I'm not going to lie.
Even if it was from the Wu-Tang?
Even from
Staten Island.
Yes.
You would know.
Even from the North Shore of Staten Island, where I grew up. I'm from the middle of the island. Just again, a perfect example. As the crow flies, maybe a couple miles. Maybe. 3 miles. But yeah. And totally lost on me. And I would kind of turn to him and just say, what was that? You know, what just because I want to know. You know, I know he's making a reference.
Right.
It went totally over my head. And the number of people that would complain about it, that would call in or write because they thought they were being excluded. They knew, white people knew they were being excluded from the pop culture reference of the show that they love to watch because it plugged into their pop culture frame of reference. And here's Stewart talking in a manner that they felt was purposefully exclusionary as opposed to being inclusionary for an audience that was different than yours.
Yep.
And Stewart would be like, to hell with that. I'm going to use this line. I'm going to use that line. And then people would be stunned that he actually used a line from Shakespeare as if Shakespeare was beyond.
I loved when he threw lyrics in like that. I loved it.
You know, sound and fury signifying nothing.
To me, that was
He
great.
would use that, okay, at any rate. So one day I make a reference, a Seinfeld reference. Because this is, you know, the mid to late 90s. I make a Seinfeld reference, go to break. People on the set laugh. Everybody laughs. I'm feeling good about myself. Just made a funny that I thought landed. Stu turns to me, he goes, what was that? And I'm like, that was Seinfeld. Like that. And he went literally like, brothers don't watch Seinfeld. And I honestly sat there and I'm like, okay. I understand.
Right.
I totally understand that. And this may be why it worked so well with Stu and I, is that I brought my frame of reference and upbringing, and he brought his frame of reference and upbringing, and we did it together in a manner which we respected and loved one another. May he rest in peace, this man. I really wonder what he would be thinking today. And the reason why I'm getting all emotional is you want to talk about love for another human being. He watched me, you know, meet my wife and court my wife, and he was there for me every step of the way. And he knew sometimes is when you meet people and meet one another, and sometimes it takes a while for a relationship to happen, and just it did for my wife and I, and we have 3 beautiful children now. And I just remember, I don't know why this is coming to me right now, on our wedding day, Stuart, there's a picture of Stuart holding my hand in this wedding ring that's on my finger right now and kind of looking at me like, we did it. We did it. And I'm white, he's black. And the world keeps spinning. And I want this world to be a great place for my children and for his 2 beautiful daughters and his family. And I didn't expect to go on this conversation today on this Jag. But I kind of feel it's important as we try to find common ground and try and find a time where, right now it's not the moment, where people can kneel during the national anthem and people don't look at them cross-eyed because they feel that they're being disrespectful, and that somebody who stands at attention and puts their hand over their chest isn't viewed as being ignorant of the person who's kneeling experience. if we can get there. Whew. 844-204-RICH, number to dial. Let's take a phone call. Linda in Dallas. I believe you called yesterday, Linda. Is that correct?
No, that actually was a different Linda from Texas.
Okay. there's more than one Linda in Texas. Go figure.
Apparently.
Okay. What's on your mind, Linda?
Well, Rich, I really appreciate you, by the way. I'm a longtime fan of yours and a faithful listener to the show. And,
Thank you.
And I appreciate how you share your heart. I really do. You get riled up, too, and sometimes I don't agree with you, but that's okay.
I know one speed only, Linda. That's it, including when I run my 40 for St. Jude, sadly, as well. So.
Well, everybody loves your sincerity.
Thank you for saying that.
So here's what I wanted to say. Colin Kaepernick should not have lost his job because he decided to kneel during the national anthem. But he did because people interpreted that to mean that he didn't respect the flag or the people who served. And that was wrong, because that's not what he meant. But I was thinking, even if he did mean that, he still shouldn't have lost his job, because we have the freedom to believe whatever we want. That's what America is, right? And I feel like today you have the same thing happening in reverse, because Drew Brees believes that it's wrong to kneel during the national anthem, and people are interpreting that to mean that he doesn't support ending racism and injustice. And it is kneeling during the anthem the only way to show that support for the black cause? And if you don't do that, then you don't believe that things need to change?
No, I know what you're saying there. It's just Brees said he will never agree with anybody who protests in that manner. And to say that at this moment in time right now, Linda, is
I hear you.
To call it provocative might even be too light of a word. But he does not, in my mind, I am sincere when I say this. I've never seen a racist bone in this man's body. I've never seen him make an offhanded remark. I've seen him in many different parts of the world off camera, and I've never seen that. But and again, the fact that it's still conflated, the issue's conflated of kneeling during the national anthem and being anti-military by doing that, it just boggles the mind. But I do understand what you're saying, and I appreciate you calling to say it.
Can I add one other thing?
You may.
Thank you. Just a bit of vulnerability. I actually did feel that way when Colin Kaepernick knelt. My feelings have changed on it, because I felt like, man, that doesn't seem right during the national anthem,
Right.
You put your hand over your heart or whatever. But my feelings have changed on it because I've been listening to what people are saying and just really realizing how bad it is. And, Malcolm Jenkins' video, I just started to cry.
Me too.
Hearing the pain in his voice. And so it's tragic. It's truly tragic.
Linda, thank you for saying that. And I pumped my fist when you said the word listening, because that's what we all need to do. I'll be honest. By the way, I don't know why I keep saying that. That might be just a verbal crutch, because if I don't say that, does that mean that what I'm about to say is disingenuous?
Right.
Right?
You've been hanging out with Mike too long.
Is that what TJ said off?
See, that's not right.
Well, walks like a duck, Mike.
When I first saw Kaepernick do it, I'm like, what the hell is he doing?
I think everybody did.
I got, but then I listened.
Right,
exactly.
I heard what he's attempting to do, and I'm like, oh, now I get it.
Also, we had never seen anything like that before.
We had seen, the raising of the fist during the Olympics in the late 60s.
The kneeling.
Another, by the way, peaceful protest.
Sure.
People need to watch the video of him being interviewed.
Who, Kaepernick?
Kaepernick, right after he did that, and listen to what he says.
Explains exactly.
He explains it.
He explains the why.
I'm always going to be fair here. When he wore the pig socks, though, during training camp.
As an ex-cop, I even got mad and I said it to you guys.
That's how these issues get conflated.
Yeah. Right.
Although he is saying that the cops are not fair to everyone. That was a very provocative maneuver on his part.
Yes.
But still wasn't.
But it's a pair of socks. At this point in time, I'm like,
It just sucks. I mean, would you rather socks or somebody getting socked?
Exactly.
It's like people got
Looking
so
back
mad
on that,
about socks.
yeah.
It's like, I'm sure your opinion maybe has changed on that.
It
Mike.
totally has.
Like,
100% at this point. For that moment, yeah. Different.
Okay, phone lines are lit. By the way, 25 minutes ago, the Board of Governors began to meet.
All right.
And any minute now, we're expecting here that the NBA Board of Governors has approved this return to play action, and then we could start getting ready for a tip-off on July 31st for the NBA season. And Chris Mannix will be joining us in our third hour of the program at 2 Eastern Time from Sports Illustrated to join us to discuss this. And then I implore everyone to please stay put at 20 minutes past the hour, because Anquan Boldin's going to join us, and I've not seen him speak anywhere, talk anywhere, and I am honored that he said yes to our invitation to join, because his Players Coalition is about it. And when I say about it, I mean action. So many people are saying, I want to do something, I want to do something. Well, he's going to tell you what we can do together to call state houses, to call capitals in states as well as the U.S. and say, this is what we would like you as our representative to do. Actionable items. We're 1 hour in the books here. When we come back, the NBCSN audience will join us right here on The Rich Eisen Show.
Do I lean forward?
Yes.
I'm gonna fall.
Toes forward.
Is this the technology or the entertainment or the policy portion of this place?
Please fall. Please fall.
Oh, I got it. Dude. Dude, there's a light.
I mean, this is not.
Can you go backwards? You gotta turn, brother.
Hi. Dude, I'm not gonna turn you around, or I'm not gonna. Look at this.
Look at this.
This is not going to end well. Do we have that drop? What could possibly go wrong, or do we don't have that out here?
No, I don't have
Did you just dab it?
Yeah, I'm flying right now. Woo! There's definitely some oh my God, there's expensive equipment that is going to go, not into the television. That would be great TV, though. Into the screen. It's a good workout. It's like a thigh master. I'm glad we got this out of our system after George Will walked out of here. Oh, he's too quiet. What? Look at this.
I mean,
Law, do you want to cut?
By the way,
now I want to see Law try.
By the way, Chuck Todd has to broadcast an inauguration tomorrow, and we're making.
By the way, I am killing it right now. Look at you now. This is definitely not going to end well.
Somebody's getting a little.
Look
All right, I'm good. How do I get off?
I don't know.
How do I stop this crazy thing? Jane, help! I knew this was not going to end well. I'm really in pain. I'm really hurting.
Oh my God!
I fell on the mic pack.
KT! Are you all right? Are you seriously hurt?
Yeah.
This is The Rich Eisen Show.
Jim Trotter here on The Rich Eisen Show.
Live from The Rich Eisen Show studio in Los Angeles.
When you go to the league office, if you include the COO, there are only two people of color. The two men making decisions in the newsroom are both white. So if the league is talking about how it is about racial equality and whatnot, the numbers seem to reflect otherwise.
Earlier on the show, former Green Beret Nate Boyer. Coming up, Super Bowl champion receiver Anquan Boldin, senior writer for Sports Illustrated Chris Mannix. And now, it's Rich Eisen.
Well, hey, everybody. It's a Thursday edition of The Rich Eisen Show. I am, yes, matching with my shirt with the color scheme behind me here on the program.
Look at you.
Totally, well, I did it on purpose, okay. It's all about the branding here on NBCSN. We say hello to our NBCSN audience. Hello to my friends across the way, Chris Brockman and Mike Del Tufo. I'm not going to lie to you. It was a very emotional first hour that we just had on our YouTube stream, youtube.com/Rich Eisen Show, Sirius XM Channel 211. If you missed it, I ask you to please go seek it out. We chatted with Nate Boyer, former Green Beret, who, along with Jake Glazer, helped found the wonderful organization Merging Vets and Players, where vets and players from the sports world figure out what they need to do in life after they've been done with either their service in the military or service in sports. They come together. Nate's been at the forefront of that. Nate was the guy who back in 2016, in the summer of 2016, got hooked up with Colin Kaepernick and told Colin, when Colin asked him, after he initially was sitting during the national anthem, Colin asked Nate, what can I do to not offend people in the military? I don't want to offend people in the military. This is not an anti-military stance, figuratively, that he is taking. Nate said he told Colin, there's nothing you can do that won't offend people in the military right now. But here's what I would suggest. We in the military kneel alongside our brethren, kneel alongside people we fight with, and also kneel when we propose in marriage. We kneel, get on bended knee when we are asking for people to pay attention to what we're about to say. So how about kneeling? And then Colin did it, and Nate stood next to him in an MVP shirt and put his hand over his heart and stood during the national anthem that night in San Diego. It was Military Appreciation Night. This was in the summer of 2016. And Nate stood because Colin asked him, would you join me in kneeling? And Nate said, no, I prefer to stand during the national anthem. And one gentleman knelt and another man stood at attention, put his hand over his heart. And they were both, yes, representing the same thing, which is demonstrating in the United States of America. One in protest, another in a show of love of the flag, one kneeling in protest to describe to others, to call attention to others that the flag and what it represents to Nate Boyer, the flag and the fairness and the equality that it connotes to people in this country doesn't have the same connotation for everybody, because fairness and equality isn't applied uniformly in this country, certainly when it comes to policing, which was Kaepernick's message. Well, we all know that that message on many got lost, and we all know that that message got conflated by many to mean it was anti-military. anti-unity, as opposed to showing everyone it's not about the anthem, not about the flag. It's about what it represents to you. It does not represent to me because my experience is different from yours. And listen to me about my experience so we can all have the same experience in this country. And you knew that was what Kaepernick was saying. If you listened, if you heard, if you absorbed. And that, to me, is what is the most patently disappointing and upsetting aspect of what Drew Brees had to say yesterday. Something for which he apologized this morning, and I want to say this before we delve a little bit deeper into that, is I have known Drew Brees since, I would say, 2003, when the NFL Network began. I have been around Drew and his beautiful wife and family. I have been around him off camera. I have been around him in community aspects. I hosted a charity tournament, golf tournament, fundraiser for him. I'm glad to do it, and I would be happy to do it again, because I do not believe he has a racist bone in his body. I do not believe he looks at people and thinks that person is less than because of the color of his skin. I don't think that for a minute, and I don't think he's raising his children that way for a split second, and I don't think his wife feels that way, and I don't think at all that about him. But I am mystified how, when he was asked in an interview yesterday what he thinks about the possibility of players kneeling again during the national anthem, because what is going on in the world today, how everything that we are seeing and everything that is being discussed in this country is exactly why Colin Kaepernick took a knee during the national anthem and other NFL players did. It's mystifying to me that this was his response to that question.
Well, I will never agree with anybody disrespecting the flag of the United States of America or our country. Let me just tell you what I see or what I feel when the national anthem is played and when I look at the flag of the United States. I envision my two grandfathers who fought for this country during World War II, one in the Army and one in the Marine Corps, both risking their lives to protect our country and to try to make our country and this world a better place. So every time I stand with my hand over my heart, looking at that flag and singing the national anthem, that's what I think about. And in many cases, it brings me to tears, thinking about all that has been sacrificed, not just those in the military, but for that matter, those throughout the civil rights movements of the 60s, and everyone and all that has been endured by so many people up until this point. And is everything right with our country right now? No, it's not. We still have a long way to go. But I think what you do by standing there and showing respect to the flag with your hand over your heart is it shows unity. It shows that we are all in this together. We can all do better, and that we are all part of the solution.
Well, you could take a wild guess as to how that went over with many of his colleagues in his locker room, as well as the rest of the National Football League. It did not go very well. All you got to do is check out videos posted by Ed Reed and his current teammate Malcolm Jenkins, and so on and so forth. Michael Thomas, who set records this year, plural, because of the connection between these two men. Tweeting all that. Blowback is one way to put it. Drew Brees has every right to feel this way. He has every right to express it in the same way Colin Kaepernick had every right to take a knee and everybody else to take a knee. It's just like, okay, let's hear why you're saying that, Drew. Let's hear why you're saying that or doing that, Colin and everyone else, and have a conversation. But you can't say, I'll never agree with you. If that means the way that somebody's taking a knee, I don't want to listen to that. until you stand. That's the thing that we had this conversation in 2017. We talked about it over and over and over and over again as to why these demonstrations were happening and what it meant and what it didn't mean. And to separate all that, to finally get to the conversation that we need to have as a country clearly. I thought we were through all that. And then to say this, when the protests that you're seeing, at the very least, if you don't agree with it, it's peaceful. Look what's happening in the streets of our country right now. Hopefully less and less. Because fewer and fewer bad actors are being outed as those who are using these moments to rabble-rouse and cover up again or dust over again the need to have these conversations as to why the protests are happening. That's to me, the most disappointing aspect of Drew Brees' comments, and I am delighted that he apologized today on Instagram. I don't know how that will go over with his teammates and everyone else in the NFL. I'm a 50-year-old white man. My experiences are my experiences. So I don't know how this apology will go over. There's apparently a team meeting with the New Orleans Saints today. That should be quite something, to say the least. I do not know how that's all going to work out. But I can't believe that we're still having a conversation as to why the kneeling took place in 2016 and 17 and what conversation needs to be had and how it's a much better form of protest than what we're seeing with skulls getting cracked right now. Let's have the conversation. Let's get to a spot where somebody can be at a game and kneel during the national anthem and people don't look at them cross-eyed, and that somebody stands at attention during the national anthem, by the way, as I do with my wife and my family, as I tell my children, stand up, put your hand over your heart and your hat off. But that does not mean that I am completely ignorant to why somebody is kneeling or wants to have a conversation about it and then have me want to do something about it. And that's what our first guest calling in is about. When I reached out to Anquan Boldin, guy who's got some Hall of Fame credentials, I think, I'm like, let's have an action-oriented conversation. Because I think I speak for many, most, if not hopefully all. We want something to be done. It's not enough to just say something should be done. Well, what can we do? What can we do? What can be done when we have this conversation? Anquan Boldin has co-founded something called Players Coalition. You may have heard about it. It is associated with the NFL in terms of one of their partners. And Anquan will potentially, if he feels the need, want, desire, tell us more about who he's associated with. But they have on their site exact things that you as a human being can do by calling a representative of yours at every form and level of government to say, this is the bill we would like you to champion. This is the law that we think that should be repealed. So on and so forth. Actionable items. That's what I'd like to have. And then have a conversation with you at 844-204-RICH. We've got time for your phone calls. Got a little emotional talking in the first hour about this subject.
Yeah, that's when you're at your best.
When I need to bust out a little bit of the Kleenex. Because I was talking about Stuart Scott and what he would think about today, and I love bringing him up and keeping his memory alive. Certainly, as we're seeing everything that's going on in this world with race relations and obviously sports, and then an individual who I used to know who is no longer recognizable to me in Laura Ingraham, who rightfully said, and I'll say this, Drew Brees has every right to say what he's saying and feel what he's feeling. But you can't turn around and make that point and say LeBron James and Kevin Durant should shut up and dribble. Nuh-uh. LeBron and Kevin Durant are just athletes who should have no opinions. Just shut up and dribble. But Drew Brees, he makes an interesting point. And he's a human. He should be listened to. I wonder what the difference between those three athletes are. Nuh-uh. It's called equality. It's called fairness. And it should be applied to every human. And not just because of race. I feel that point should be made today. And on top of all of it, we've got to get to a point where the accord happens. Will it happen in our lifetimes? I sure hope so. And that's why I want to talk about actionable items and coming together and making statements where we can all listen and have a conversation and not say, I'll never agree, when it's something that you can make a point and be heard, and you can make a point and be heard. And as long as it's not utterly racist and fascist, we can have a conversation about it in this great country of ours. When we come back, Michael Thomas just tweeted, is the meeting over? Did they have a team meeting? Is that what this is about? Or are you still commenting about Drew Brees?
No, he's commenting about Drew Brees, said that he accepts Drew's apology. Now back to the movement.
Okay. And in that regard, Anquan Boldin will be joining us. And then Chris Mannix will join us to talk some hoops, because it looks like the Board of Governors is going to approve a return-to-play proposal for the association. We're back on NBCSN, Sirius XM, and YouTube in a moment. Okay, let's talk about our friends at Geico. Though we are these days sheltering in place, most of us, when we're not out on the streets or having to make ends meet. Geico just wants to say thanks to everybody that is sharing their experiences. It's Geico's turn now to share as well with the Geico Give Back, a 15% credit on car and motorcycle policies for current and new customers. And because Geico's committed for the long haul, the 15% credit lasts your full policy term. Go to geico.com/giveback for info and eligibility. Again, learn more about Geico's 15% credit on car and motorcycle policies at geico.com/giveback. How you doing over there? We got a.
Man, it's been,
I know it's heavy. It's a heavy conversation,
yeah, of course.
And Anquan's going to join us in a second, and I'm thrilled about that.
These are the discussions that need to be had,
right? We have a poll question, a pop culture related poll question.
We do have a kind of a fun pop culture poll question.
You want to just uncork it right now for a little levity, and then we'll get back to the serious stuff, and then eventually return to the sports conversation.
Sure, why not?
And pop culture.
We've been talking about movies a lot this week. Yesterday, we went 80s Tom Hanks movies. Today, we're going movie sequels. Wrath of Khan, Star Trek II, released today in 1982.
Didn't I mention this yesterday?
You did mention Wrath of Khan yesterday.
You didn't talk about sequels.
Yeah.
Or because this is why. We talked about Superman.
Right.
Yeah.
And I said that Superman, because the Board of Governors, now I remember why we discussed this.
Right,
we put it all together. And how the best of the Superman series, Superman 2, best of Star Trek is Wrath of Khan, best of Godfather is Godfather 2. You could say Empire Strikes Back is the best of the Star Wars.
Right. So we're going to go best movie sequel today.
Okay.
Best movie sequel. Again, Twitter only allows for 4 options. So these are the 4 if you want to.
Yes, sir.
If you can find a phone line, call it in if you want. Wrath of Khan, Godfather 2, Empire Strikes Back, Terminator 2. Best movie sequel.
Oh, T2 is pretty damn good.
T2.
We've had Robert Patrick on many times.
I know how awesome Aliens is, but like, is it better than those 4?
It's a tough one. I think Aliens is definitely on the outside looking in.
Aliens is 5. It's close.
I mean, Bill Paxton.
4A.
No, Don.
Wow.
Don.
Let's explain to the audience what Don Bowie, my erstwhile producer friend, said in my ear, that it's better than the Wrath of Khan, and I'll tell you what. There's no better Star Trek than the Wrath of Khan, and Star Trek is the greatest. You want to talk? There's no aliens without Star Trek.
True.
Oh gosh, look at that. That's a fantastic mock-up right there. I will take that for my own personal collection, please. All right, when we come back, we get back to the matter at hand with Anquan Boldin in 20 seconds. Podcast1.com/Rich Eisen is where you could go to catch our podcast every day on demand. Catch all 3 hours of this show whenever you wish for your ear gate, as Michael Irvin would use that phrase. And I'm thrilled that he accepted my invitation to call into this program because I always enjoyed watching his work in his years in the National Football League. 9th all-time in catches, 14th all-time in yards. He's got 82 touchdowns to his credit. That's just the regular season. He had a touchdown catch in the Ravens' victory in the Super Bowl back in Super Bowl 47. But most importantly, he's co-founder of Players Coalition. He's joining us right here on The Rich Eisen Show. He is Anquan Boldin. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good, Rich. How are you doing?
I am doing better for talking to you. I thank you for saying yes to this invitation to come on here. Walter Payton, NFL Man of the Year in 2015. I should also mention that. Anquan Boldin, what is going through your mind today, Anquan? It's a big macro question, but I would love to know what's in your mind and in your heart at this very moment as you call into the show.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a big question, but I think I'm at a point now with what's going on in our country of trying to pinpoint the problems that we've continued to come across time and time again in this country. Obviously, I mean, you had to be sleeping under a rock in order to not know what's going on in our country right now. Especially with, what happened with Mr. Floyd, what happened with Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery recently. And the thing that keeps coming back is, how does this keep happening? And how does it keep happening without accountability? And I think that's the question that I've been looking at and trying to answer. And I think for so long we've missed the mark. We are talking about, community policing. We're talking about body cameras. We're talking about all of these solutions. And none of them hit the mark. And you can do all of the community policing you want. And you have a situation. Let's just say you do community policing for 10 years, and you have a situation like what happened in Minneapolis happen. All of the work that you've done and your department has done for the last 10 years with community policing goes out the window when there is no accountability for what's happening. And the reason I say that is because there's a fight in this country that has to be had. A lot of people have avoided that fight. And the fight that I'm talking about is qualified immunity. That's the thing that nobody is talking about.
So let's talk about it. What do you mean by that, Anquan? Because again, we're as you're saying this, we're showing streets of this this nation. We're also seeing it internationally, the attention that is being brought to the matter at hand in a way that I think it feels unprecedented to me. But again, I'm a 50-year-old white guy. I want to. What do you mean by that? So now that there's potentially more attention being paid here.
Right. So what I mean by that is there is language in, number one, the Supreme Court, and there is language in union contracts that allows for officers to not be held accountable. So, number one, in the Supreme Court, which is actually something that I think people are starting to look more into as of recently, is the immunity piece from the Supreme Court, which no government official, and I think government officials, especially, one of the things that's really jacked up is prosecutors, like attorneys, your state's attorney and your district attorneys. These prosecutors who have complete immunity, meaning no matter what they do, they're not held accountable. And I'll give you an example of it, right? So take the Ahmaud Arbery case, for example.
Mm-hmm.
There were, 3 prosecutors on that case? And the first prosecutor denied law enforcement from arresting those 2 guys, the McMichaels, right? And then it came to light that there was a conflict of interest. That first prosecutor had to recuse himself, and then she passed it to another prosecutor who she knew would do the exact same thing that she was going to do. And luckily, we found out that there was a conflict of interest with the second prosecutor, which means he had to recuse himself. Now, before he recused himself, he tried to taint that case by saying, I found them doing no wrong. They were well within their rights to be doing what they did. They are innocent. And he was out of line for doing that. He was against the law for doing that. But because he and the first prosecutor has immunity, complete immunity, nothing will be done against them. Nothing will be done to hold them accountable. Now let's go to law enforcement or police. A lot of people don't know that there are contracts between cities and the unions, the police unions.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of languages in the contracts that allow for officers to go unpunished. Every contract has different language in it, but there's 2 parts to those contracts. There's one part that talks about the financing, and then there's a second part that talks about the discipline. And that's where we as a nation have to start looking. Because what kind of system allows an officer with 18 prior complaints, 2 of them being shootings, to continue to be on the force?
Anquan Boldin here on the Rich Eisen Show, co-founder of Players Coalition. So let's give somebody out there who's saying, I want to do something, I want to call somebody. So is there, again, I'm sure we could fill 3 hours with this. Is there, I guess, a way for somebody to educate themselves on what they should be calling a representative of theirs for and to do? Is there a cheat sheet? Is there something that you have that people can go learn? Is there one that you want to bring up here that, I guess, other than what you've just mentioned, actionable items that you think somebody should undertake, Anquan Boldin?
I think there are a lot of actionable items because, unfortunately, we we don't have a justice system. We have a legal system. And legal systems are completely different than justice systems. So when we're talking about actionable items, I think one of the easiest things to do is, number one, to register people to vote, but to also educate people on why you're voting, who you're voting for, and what they stand behind. So a lot of people don't understand, like, when you go in to vote, there's more than just your president or, you know, there are a lot of people on those ballots, a lot of people who a lot of times you hear nothing about.
Right.
There will be district attorney races all across this country. There will be sheriff's races all across this country. There will be circuit court judge races all across this country. Yes, you will have your presidential election, but your local elections are those people who directly impact you on a daily basis. And I would challenge people to not only find out who those people are, but find out what their job entails and find out what policies they stand behind.
Players-coalition.org is the website for your coalition. Anquan Boldin here on the Rich Eisen Show. What is your relationship with the NFL and how, hand in hand, potentially, the NFL, as you know, received a ton of flack over the weekend to put out a statement in support of a lot of what you've just mentioned. I wonder what your relationship is with the league that you spent so many years in, Anquan.
Yeah, our as a players coalition, we're an entirely separate entity from the NFL. The Players Coalition is a players-led initiative that is fighting all of the injustices in this country. And we stand on 4 different pillars: education, economic advancement, criminal justice reform, and police community relations. And for us, those are the 4 places where we've placed our efforts trying to combat the injustices that happen in this country.
So is there a role, do you think, that sports can play here, not just the NFL? I mean, and what athletes can do here to start the conversation? Because we all know the conversation that's been had over the last 24 hours involves Drew Brees' comments, for which he has apologized. I wonder what your thoughts on that subject are, Anquan.
I think sports could play a huge role. But I think in order for that to happen, like, people have to be open and honest. I think a lot of times, you know, we beat around the bush on certain subjects. We're not completely honest about things that go on. And then, you know, the conversation, I keep hearing people saying there's a conversation that needs to be had. And I think I don't know if that's the right way to say it, because I think we all know what the problem is. Like, so it's not so much of a conversation. And I'm at the point now where I'm kind of tired of talking, and I'm more about putting action to what it is that we're talking about. Because we can talk all day about what needs to happen, but until there is a strategy and a concrete plan and action being carried out, then the talking part is just that, talking.
Have you thought of running for office yourself?
No. Not at all.
Why is that?
I mean, I just haven't. For me, it's about helping those that don't have a voice. And I know we say, you know, you can do that from office, but a lot of times when people get in office, they seem to be handcuffed with what they can do. So I think it's important to, especially for people like myself, athletes, entertainers, whatever, anybody with a platform or some type of influence, to, number one, expose what's happening in our country, because I think for far too long we haven't. We have to shine a light on those things that are truly the problem, those people that are truly the problem. And I think until we do that and deal with the real issues, we're going to continue. And unfortunately, if we don't, we're going to be right back here again. Because you have to understand, this isn't the first time this has happened. This isn't the first time people in America have protested. This has gone on throughout our history. And people are outraged for quite some time. And then it seems like everybody gets back to their normal way of doing things. And I would hate for this moment to pass and there not be any type of change come about from it. Because we're at a pivotal point in our country. Either we're going to fight this or we're not. Either we're against this or we're going to accept it. So we're at a point right now where we have to decide as a country, what are we going to do? Are we going to truly be about change, or are we just going to offer lip service and make people feel comfortable until this happens again?
If you were in the locker room, the virtual locker room of the Saints today, Anquan Boldin, what would you say to Drew Brees?
Honestly, I've heard about what Drew Brees said. I don't know. And honestly, I've tried to stay away from the media. Like I said, for me, I'm trying to come up with solutions. So I don't honestly know the whole Drew Brees situation. So I'm kind of I really don't know.
Well, I mean, again, the reason why I bring it up is because, again, he is one of the most, you obviously know this, famous individuals that the sport has. And his statement was talking about never agreeing with somebody who would kneel on the flag. And that's, again, part of the conversation that I think you said, you wish you didn't have to keep having because you're done wanting to do anything but get actionable items on the table. So that's the reason why I bring it up. And clearly that conversation needs to be had with somebody who does have a lot of influence if he can bring it to bear for something that you need to be brought to bear. That's why I bring it up, Anquan.
Yeah, so he said he doesn't agree with people kneeling?
Well, he was asked by a reporter, again, you want to, I'll play the sound bite for you to make sure that I don't just paraphrase it. But again, he was asked, if everything that's going on right now in the world would cause players to kneel again, and what would happen in the NFL if that happened. And this was his response.
Well, I will never agree with anybody disrespecting the flag of the United States of America or our country. Let me just tell you what I see or what I feel when the national anthem is played and when I look at the flag of the United States. I envision my two grandfathers who fought for this country during World War II, one in the Army and one in the Marine Corps, both risking their lives to protect our country and to try to make our country and this world a better place. So every time I stand with my hand over my heart, looking at that flag and singing the national anthem, that's what I think about. And in many cases, it brings me to tears, thinking about all that has been sacrificed, not just those in the military, but for that matter, those throughout the civil rights movements of the 60s, and everyone and all that has been endured by so many people up until this point. And is everything right with our country right now? No, it's not. We still have a long way to go. But I think what you do by standing there and showing respect to the flag with your hand over your heart is it shows unity. It shows that we are all in this together. We can all do better, and that we are all part of the solution.
He has since apologized for offending with the comments, Anquan. I do want to say that.
Wow. First off, if I were in that locker room, I would tell Drew, unfortunately, you have not been listening. And so from the moment players started kneeling, they had to repeatedly say, it's not about the national anthem, it's not about the flag. And players have told you why they are kneeling. And I think every time somebody did an interview, they first started off by saying, it's not about the flag. It's not about the flag. It's not about the anthem. It's about African-American black men and women dying far too often at the hands of law enforcement. So if you took what you just said from the conversations that we've been having over the last couple of years, number one, you haven't been listening at all to what your brothers in the locker room have been saying. And you're trying to tell a group of people how they should handle the injustices that have been happening to them since the beginning of this country. And that's disheartening, and it makes you wonder, are you really about trying to bring about change, or do you just want things to be comfortable in the way that you do them? Because I can't see something happening to a person and that person crying out to me for help, and then I tell that person, number one, how they should feel, and number two, how they should react. I can't tell a rape victim how they should act after they've been raped. I can't tell them how they should feel after they've been raped. If I'm truly trying to help that person, I have to listen. And I have to have some form of empathy, and I have to step outside of myself, outside of my shoes, in order to really understand what's going on in their lives. Because if I'm not a rape victim, I would never know or never understand what that person is dealing with. And how can I say I'm truly trying to help them if I'm telling them how to deal with it?
Well, apparently that's part of the conversations that are being had with the Saints today, Anquan, and I just wanted to place that in front of you because, again, at some point everybody's got to come together, and we all have to fight this thing together, and that's one of the many reasons why I wanted to have you on here today, to give people who are out there, I guess, before I let you go on with your day, and again, appreciate you calling in, what can people do? One more time, an actionable item to leave everybody with, Anquan.
So, like I said earlier, there's a lot of actionable items. We can be on your podcast for hours,
yes,
talking about things to do. Again, it's important that we vote. It's important that we educate ourselves on who we're voting for, what their positions carry, what their job entails, and the policies that they stand behind. It's also important for us to hold those that are in positions of power accountable. Like I said, if we fail to do that, we will continue to be in this place. If we continue to allow law enforcement to walk away with qualified immunity, then we're going to be in this place again. If we continue to allow a system that had officers with 18 complaints against them continue to be on the force, we'll be here again. If we allow those complaints against officers to not be made public, we'll be here again. And these are the things that are going on that people are not talking about. Government officials, like prosecutors, having complete immunity. No matter how many times they break the law, they're not held criminally responsible. So the only thing we can do, especially for prosecutors, they are elected officials. So we have to know who our prosecutors are, who our DAs and who our state attorneys are. We have to know the policies that they stand behind. And when they don't do the job the right way, we have to make sure that we vote these people out.
Anquan, thank you for the time. I appreciate it. Again, your co-founder, Malcolm Jenkins, had quite a video about what we just talked about with Drew Brees, and he's been on before, and I can't get enough of my conversations with him, despite him going to an inferior school of higher learning in Ohio State. Guess I actually did that. And I appreciate you joining as well. What you and Malcolm are doing is just nothing short of amazing and remarkable, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, no problem, Rich. Thanks for having me on.
You got it, Anquan. That's Anquan Boldin here on The Rich Eisen Show. Walter Payton Man of the Year award winner, and obviously somebody who is about it. Michael Thomas, one of my brothers, made a public statement yesterday that I disagreed with. He apologized, and I accepted because that's what we are taught to do as Christians. Now back to the movement, hashtag George Floyd. So it looks like the team meeting has either gone down and went well, or these two gentlemen have had a conversation. And now we need to be about it. Be about it. We'll be back. Your phone calls, 844-204-RICH, number to dial. We'll check on the world of the NBA with Chris Mannix still to come as well.
Just couldn't help yourself, could you?
Anquan Boldin, everybody. Kurt Warner loves that guy. You mention his name to Kurt Warner, Kurt lights up. I'll be honest, I'm a little jealous. Say my name to Kurt. No, I know.
Your name might light up,
I know I
Kurt,
never
you know what I mean?
played in a Super Bowl with Kurt, but I have broadcast Super Bowl pre-games with Kurt.
Basically,
it's not the same thing?
Basically the same.
It's kind of
basically the same. It's basically the same.
We're teammates. It's a Super Bowl.
Yeah, you're there. You're in the building. It's fine. You're wearing a uniform.
I don't think Anquan's done another show, and I'm honored, man.
Yeah, I haven't seen him anywhere. That was great.
He was a rookie the first year NFL Network came on the air.
2003, right?
Yep.
That was the year. Do you remember it was like week 2. He played the Jets and broke his face.
That year? No.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't that year. It wasn't his rookie year.
No, it was 2007.
Right. Yeah. Kurt was his quarterback.
Yeah.
Yeah. In 03, I think Kurt was still in. With St. Louis. Where's our poll stand right now, Chris? We haven't brought it to the NBCSN
We haven't
audience
brought
yet, but we will.
yet.
We
So,
will.
results early. Best movie sequel. Rich, you're 0 for 2 on contributions here. Wrath of Khan, 4%. Terminator 2, 17%. By the way, I mean, this is crazy. Godfather 2, 37%. Empire Strikes Back, 42%.
Excuse me. My contribution's what you're saying here. Like, there's no way Aliens is going to rate better than Wrath of Khan. There's no way Aliens rates better than Wrath of Khan.
I'm just saying, in 2 days, your contributions are like 6% total.
Don wants to have a separate poll question: which is better, Aliens or Wrath of Khan?
I don't think you want to do that.
I do.
Why don't you put her in charge?
You don't
I love
understand.
Bill Paxton's
You
great.
do not understand
you
the
don't wanna do it.
power of Trek.
I mean, is Mike Freeman calling in?
Do it. Do it.
Okay.
Second poll question, straight up with those two.
Sub poll.
Do it.
Which movie is better?
Which would you rather see? Which is a better sequel?
Which is a better sequel? Rich, you may lose the doubleheader today.
That's fine.
Side poll.
That's fine.
You may lose the double.
I stand firm in my convictions.
I mean,
sir.
I love The Wrath of Khan. Great movie.
We'll be back. Eight 844-204-RICH, number to dial. Let's take some phone calls here. He is, just in case many of you might still be new to our show because you picked us up on NBCSN a few weeks ago. He's been calling in the show maybe since day one, and I'm thrilled to have him here. And I know he just called in, and others have been waiting a long time, but he has tenure. He's got tenure, right?
He sure does.
He's got tenure.
Yeah,
Jeff in Detroit. How are you, Jeff?
Hey, what's going on, I got 20 years, too, don't I?
Nice.
Listen, I really appreciate the tone of the show today because the conversation needs to be had. In reference to Neil and in reference to just, I mean, people really don't get it. And I'm hoping that Drew Brees gets it now, that kneeling before the flag is not disrespectful. When you get ready to propose, what do? You kneel. When you get ready to go before kings and queens, what do? You kneel. In almost every religion around the world, before you go before your God, you kneel. The only thing that we're doing when we're kneeling before the national anthem is requesting that we be heard, requesting that somebody understands that injustice cannot go on. The flag itself, the Pledge of Allegiance that we give to each and every American states, one nation, under God, indivisible. That means unseparated, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if you think that liberty and justice for all in today's day is, just think about it. In today's day, we still have to draw upon that. And the only thing that we're asking is some of that, liberty and justice for all. Let's be indivisible. Let's get together and do it together because that's the only way it's going to get done. If I understand you, you understand me, I got to put your shoes on, you got to put my shoes on, and we'll be better men for it.
Love you, Jeff. Thanks for calling.
Thanks,
again,
Jeff.
as always, thanks for being out there. That's Jeff in Detroit here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's go to who's been waiting the longest now. Let's go there. Let's go to Stephen in Los Angeles. What's up, Stephen?
Hey, Rich. Good morning. Appreciate the show.
Thank you, saying that.
I guess I'm a bit conflicted on this whole situation. If this were 6 weeks ago, I would be frustrated with the protesters. I would be, very, very upset with the looters, obviously, as most people are. But I find myself being just kind of both sides of the fence here, where I hear people say, you don't get it if you're not with us, you're against us. It sounds like President Bush talking about terrorism. It seems, but I understand that there's more that I need to know. But it doesn't seem that there's a balance. It seems because I'm not a black man that I can't have an opinion on it, or I can't suggest ways for people to behave. That's kind of my frustration.
No, I understand what you're saying, Stephen, in that regard. But let me just say this: don't hang up on him, Mike, because I saw your hands moving over there. You got that quick finger over there. Is that as you're driving around right now, there's really no threat of you being pulled over because of the color of your skin as you're having this conversation. And that's what I think is what is being said in terms of you needing to understand why the kneeling is happening and why the conversation needs to be had, even though Anquan is done with the conversation, and you saying, hey, I stand for the national anthem. You can do that, but you can say you'll never agree with somebody who doesn't because you're not hearing the reason why they are kneeling. That, I think, is just a quick recap of everything here. And I understand, again, why you'd want to stand for the national anthem and why you would be confused why somebody doesn't. But again, like I said, you're not going to be pulled over during this. You might be pulled over this conversation because you're not hands-free. I mean, that's possible, but it won't just be because somebody's calling and saying Steven in Los Angeles is white, and and I appreciate the time, and I don't mean to not have a conversation here, but we are, if you will, up against the end of the hour, and I appreciate the call. Normally, I'd want to have a back and forth, but we're up against the clock. Speaking of which, it's been about 90 minutes since the Board of Governors began.
Haven't seen anything yet.
Okay, so I am hoping that because Mannix was saying, hey, I got to monitor that call, but we'll get him on the horn.
53 seconds ago, a Woj tweet. NBA Board of Governors voted to approve the league's 22-team format to restart this season in Orlando.
Huzzah. Huzzah. May the virus cooperate.
Yeah, right.
But that's good news. Did you hear some of the teams that weren't invited were kind of making their voices heard? Like, because I understand that if there's a big attention being paid to the sport, you'd want to be there.
Sure.
But I mean, they want to go to Disney World. Who doesn't want to go to Disney World? But when you're 25 games under and you've already been eliminated from the playoffs, it's tough to uneliminate you, right?
Yeah, maybe stay out.
Final hour, Chris Mannix and more of your phone calls at 844-204-RICH. We will talk about what the NBA has just voted upon. The Board of Governors has spoken. That's what you have to say it. You can't just say they voted to approve. Chris Mannix in our final hour on NBCSN and more in a second. Hello, Dane Cook.
Rich, how are you?
How are you? Boston Red Sox t-shirt.
Yes.
Now we're talking.
I had to rep.
True or false that you have intercepted Tom Brady at one point?
I did a charity event for Best Buddies back in Boston.
That's his charity, right? That he has his game.
Yeah, he plays quarterback for both teams. Very last play of the game, my team's down.
Yes.
I see Tom. He's going to throw this cute kid who's, been excited to get a ball thrown to him all day. So I see Tom's elbow line up. I go, this kid's not getting this ball. So I ran over and I jumped in front of this kid, pulled it down, ran it in for the game-winning touchdown. And he signed the ball. I got it in my living room.
Are you proud of yourself?
I picked 6
Dane?
off Tom.
I know that's
Brady.
fine. I understand that, but
I made a kid cry for that ball.
You stepped in front and you high-stepped Tom Brady.
Are you kidding me? That's the only way I was ever going to intercept Tom Brady.
So here's another one. Is it true that you were in the room when Tom Brady met Giselle?
That is true. That was true.
Where was this, Dane Cook?
07 AFC playoff game, and Giselle was sitting with us in the box. So the Kraft family was like, oh, Giselle's here she's never seen Tom play. And she didn't really know football. She literally, during the game, was like, so why do they have to run with the ball this way? Had that very thick Brazilian accent.
Yes.
And then we all were ushered down to the locker room. And when I saw them see each other, and she kind of grabbed him by the arms, and they're almost the same height, but she's looking at him because, he's bigger than life. It was like they were so beautiful. You know those moments in like a Disney movie where the camera just spins around the prince and princess? I felt like I was just spinning around.
And the birds start flying like zippity-doo-dah?
It was unbelievable. You were like, oh, that's a power cut. I think I called my girlfriend right there and was like, we're done. We have nothing even close to what I'm experiencing here. I felt like voyeuristic, just standing there watching them love each other live.
This is The Rich Eisen Show.
Jim Trotter here on The Rich Eisen Show.
Live from The Rich Eisen Show studio in Los Angeles.
When you go to the league office, if you include the COO, there are only two people of color. The two men making decisions in the newsroom are both white. So if the league is talking about how it is about racial equality and whatnot, the numbers seem to reflect otherwise.
Earlier on the show, former Green Beret Nate Boyer, Super Bowl champion receiver Anquan Boldin. Coming up, senior writer for Sports Illustrated Chris Mannix. And now, it's Rich Eisen.
Final hour of our show. We hope will be as dead solid perfect as T.J. Jefferson, Rich Eisen Show Grand Maester of our social media feeds. That Rich Eisen Show just jarred that putt right here on NBCSN Live. Well done, sir. I mean, that was very well done. Chris Brockman and Mike Del Tufo are at their posts. What a first couple hours we've had. Last hour on NBCSN, Anquan Boldin of. It's not the Players Coalition. It's Players Coalition. It's kind of like
the Eagles.
Sky Dome, right?
Yeah.
Unaffiliated with the NFL. Anquan Boldin really wanted to make that known. Unaffiliated with the NFL. It's Players Coalition. It's formed by him and Malcolm Jenkins. So there's a lot of conversation going on in our first hour as well with Nate Boyer, who was the Green Beret, who was the one who suggested Colin Kaepernick in the middle of the beginning of Kaepernick's figurative stance during the national anthem. He's the one who suggested Colin Kaepernick to take a knee. He joined us in the first hour since this is needed to be brought up again based on everything going on with Drew Brees. We will play back some of that sound from Nate Boyer in this final hour of the program. And your phone calls too, 844-204-RICH, number to dial. But there is news at the top of this hour on this Thursday, first Thursday in June of 2020, that the Board of Governors in the NBA, great name. I mean, just a great name. And wouldn't you want that to be like your house band? Like, hey, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the Board of Governors. Voted to approve the league's 22-team format to restart the season in Orlando. That was Woj from ESPN joining us right now from Sports Illustrated, our friend Chris Mannix back on the program. How are you, Chris?
What's going on, Rich?
You tell me. We got hoops?
Yeah, it was a near unanimous vote from, I'm just sort of getting some of these texts in real time. Portland, I guess, was the only team to vote against. I'm not exactly sure why. They're getting into this postseason scrum of a 22-team restart. So yeah, I mean they've got a format right now. I don't think they've crossed all the hurdles yet. I mean, you still have to get the players on board. They're going to have, I believe, a call tomorrow to discuss this format with some of the leadership committee on that side. And, of course, we have heard publicly nothing, and teams I've talked to have heard very little about what the safety protocols are going to be. So it's a certainly significant day for the NBA, but the work isn't done yet.
Okay, so maybe Portland's more of a Universal as opposed to a Disney. Maybe maybe they want. Maybe that's the theme park they want. That's a head scratcher, man. Because you're right. I mean, isn't that what Damian Lillard basically said? Is I don't want to come if I don't have a shot at the playoffs by just playing out the string. And the way that the methods that they approved did in fact put Portland as if a season ended today, which is a phrase I've been missing using. They would be in that play-in format for the 8th and final playoff spot. Chris?
Yeah, I mean that they're getting pretty much everything they could have asked for in this situation. I mean, now, like I said, it just happened as I came on here, so I'm trying to find out in the next hour or so. But it's interesting. That's maybe there's more to it. With I mean, there are a lot of teams out there, Rich, that wanted more than just kind of 8 regular season games. They'd like to have found a way to get to 82 to fulfill some television commitments and really make up some of the money that they've lost along the way. So maybe that has something to do with it. But again, Portland's owned by, the Allen family, which is among the richest in the world. So I mean, there's not a lot that makes sense on the surface.
Chris Mannix here on the Rich Eisen Show. So based on your thoughts reporting what you're hearing. They only voted on a format and a return, and safety protocols, health and safety protocols are still being worked on right now?
Well, health and safety protocols have to be negotiated directly with the union. Like you can't sort of unilaterally make that type of decision. So I'm sure they've got protocols they want to go through, but the particulars of them, at least as of 20 minutes ago when I was texting with two general managers, are still very much unknown to a lot of people that are out there. So we'll have to see how it's all going to come together. I mean, players have resisted the idea of being too isolated in that spot. And the NBA's pushed back some by saying, look, there's only so many people we can bring into this campus or bubble, whatever you want to call it, before the risk, becomes so prohibitive. So there certainly is some needle threading to do in a situation like that.
Chris Mannix here on the Rich Eisen Show. And let's get into it. How does the schedule get made up of those 8 regular season games, best you can tell here, Chris? It's easy in the Eastern Conference when there's 9 teams, everybody plays each other once. But in the West, I mean, wouldn't you say it would be an unbalanced schedule? Certainly if one team doesn't play the Lakers at all and somebody might have to actually play them twice. Do you think?
From what I've been told, and again, this is all very much a work. I don't know this to be true just yet. But what I've been told, one of the plans that was talked about was to go by your existing schedule, right? So if you're Portland and you got your season postponed on X date, whoever you were supposed to play next, you play next. Now, if that team doesn't exist in the current NBA landscape, you go to the next one. And since they're all going to be located in one location, you can do that pretty easily. So that seems like a logical way to do it, to just continue with your season as it was going to progress anyway. So if you're, and going into this, going into the work stoppage, Memphis was faced with a pretty tough schedule. I don't have it in front of me, but I know their schedule is one of the tougher ones down the stretch. So they may still have to face those tough teams, whereas some of these other teams that are behind them, the 3 teams that are 3.5 games back, they will maybe have an easier way to go.
And I saw, single elimination, double elimination conversation about playing. What does that mean? So it would just be single elimination if it's multiple teams, and then when it finally comes down to who makes the 8th and final playoff spot, best 2 or 3, kind of? Is that what it would be like? I'm trying to read into that.
There's some kind of, and I'm not sure all the machinations at this point of what was actually approved, but there's some kind of provisions in there for a play-in game if the 9 seed is within a certain amount of games for the 8 seed. And look, that's a useful tool to have because, if you're going to reduce the number of games left in the schedule from like, I think it was 16 for a lot of teams down to 8, you're going to have to create some wiggle room there. So I think it's something if say like the Blazers finished within 2 or 3 games of Memphis that last spot, it won't just be Memphis gets it. They will have to play Portland for that the right to go into the playoffs. And the same thing in the East. Washington, I believe, is the only team going as part of this format. If they can find a way within whatever it is, 3 or 4 games, I'm not exactly sure. Then there'll be some kind of play-in game with them and the team sitting in the 8th spot.
Sports Illustrated, Chris Mannix, a few minutes left with him right here, senior writer on the program. So what's the next steps? Next step it for me, Chris. You said there's still lots of work to be done. What's next here?
Well, it begins with all this getting approved by the players' union. And, the NBA, I think, has one of the strongest relationships between the league and its union. Adam Silver and Michelle Roberts have done multiple deals in their time in their respective positions. Adam Silver and Chris Paul, the head of the union, are incredibly close. They've had ongoing discussions. So I would imagine, and I'll probably speak to the commissioner or some kind of call with reporters later, I would imagine that they're very much on the same page. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that all the players will approve it, but I have to imagine that Silver and Roberts and Paul have a pretty clear plan for how to advance this thing forward. And when it goes to the players, that it will, maybe not rubber stamp, but we'll find the way forward after that. So the Friday call with the players is the next step. And I think in the next 24 hours, we're going to learn about the safety protocols, who's going to be allowed, who's not, so they can start getting kind of the wheels moving towards getting these guys back in their markets.
Yes, because it seems like we're not going to have what we're seeing in Major League Baseball, which is an argument over money and issues that have a collective bargaining agreement tinge to it, because that's on the horizon, and then historic levels of mistrust. It seems to me here the question will be about exactly like, how does this work? How much testing is there? Who is allowed to come to Disney World with the players? What are they going to do once they are done with a series or off day? How stringent will the testing and the quarantine be for those who are helping staff this, right? Like that to me is where the nuts and bolts of how to make this work is going to go down over the next couple of weeks with this plan, Chris, right?
Yeah, I mean the financial part is a little bit easier right now because, I mean, the league completed almost 80% of its season. Players had received well over 50% of their pay already, so you're not negotiating a huge financial package for the players at this point. Now, spinning it forward to next season, could definitely see World War III breaking out if amongst these two sides, if the fans cannot return to the stands, that revenue doesn't exist. But for right now, they're fortunate that that's less of an issue than it's going to be. And yeah, it is testing, and it's getting everybody on the same page with the logistics, all of it, and getting players on board. I have no doubt, Rich, that in the next, I haven't talked to one player that said this specifically, but there are others that have hinted at it, that you might see some players, maybe even a few prominent players, that don't want to go. Like, I mean, everybody's got unique situations, right? I mean, you've got a player like, Giannis, who has a new baby. And I'm not saying Giannis wouldn't go, but he's got a new child, and maybe that child is in the position to travel down to Florida and spend 3 months there. Maybe he doesn't want to go. Maybe there's somebody with a pre-existing condition of some kind that we don't know about. I mean, I think that stuff is going to come out in the next few days, and it'll be interesting to see what type of players and how the league deals with it.
Before I let you go, Chris Mannix, I can't not bring this up. Let's just say right around Memorial Day weekend, you and the rest of the staff at Sports Illustrated crossover staff created an all-time NBA starting five. I will read yours out: 2 guards, 2 forwards, a center, and a 6-man. Did you hear about this, Christopher Brockman? Did you hear about this one from Christopher Mannix?
I've heard about it.
All right, the guards, backcourt: Steph Curry, James Harden. They're very good. Your front court: Larry Bird and LeBron James around center. Tim Duncan, 6-man: Scottie Pippen. There's a name missing here, Chris. I don't know if it was a 10-part documentary about this gentleman. I'm not talking about Scott Burrell. That was not all 10 episodes about him. There's no Jordan on this list, Chris. What happened here?
There's not. And by the way, the number of people who suggest I should be fired for putting together a list like that.
I don't think you should. No, I don't think that. But what gives is the question.
Culture out there. That's truly what that's all about. I look. We were asked to pick a team that basically would the dream team of right now. And when I thought of that, one of the first things I thought of was that I want a team that just guns from three-point range. So I want all prolific scorers. And for all of Jordan's marvelous talents, he wasn't a great three-point shooter. I think he was something in the low 30s at that time. And in the 90s, it didn't matter. It was great. You could be that type of player and succeed. But the type of shots that Jordan took back then, like, he would never be allowed to take those shots now. Like, NBA coaches would make you run laps for shooting contested mid-range jump shots. So when I was putting the team together, I thought about Harden and Curry, both prolific scorers, three-point shooters. Give me them. And the 6-man, Rich, I want like the versatile, defensive-minded playmaker who's used to being a second banana. And Scottie Pippen, to me, epitomizes that.
See, now here's a problem. Part of your problem, Chris, is 2 guys who love the NBA, and Chris Brockman and my social media grandmaster, TJ Jefferson, who might be interested in your response, heard none of it because they were too busy arguing with each other about it. So that's honestly, like, I'm trying to listen to you, and peripherally, I'm seeing 2 of my guys just bark at each other. I don't even know what they're saying because I'm trying to pay attention to you. That's what happens when you leave Jordan off your list, Chris,
I know. It's it's blasphemy to some people, but I want the team that wins games by scoring 130 points. And I think I put together that type of team. I put together a team of gunners, and with Pippen coming off the bench as the defensive stopper and playmaker, I'm comfortable with my group going forward.
Yeah, you said you're like Coach Dale. Your team's on the floor as everybody's howling at you. Like it's like the episode that scene from Hoosiers. They're all howling at you, and you're like, my team's on the floor. That's what you're saying.
Hey, you ask Daryl Morey. Daryl Morey will tell you that James Harden's a better offensive player than Michael Jordan. So I'm going to be backstopped by the GM of the Rockets on this one.
TJ is literally off to the side. He cannot handle any of this.
Yeah, I was defending your reasoning to TJ. That's what we were going back and forth here.
Handle it. He can't handle it. All right, before I let Chris go, because I know you got stuff to do and track down the story. Ask the poll question. We have not unveiled the poll question on NBCSN during the hours yet.
Poll today.
Go for it.
Would Mannix's team beat the Bulls? No, just kidding. It's the Wrath of Khan anniversary, the release of Star Trek II in 1982. So we went best movie sequel: Wrath of Khan, Godfather 2, Empire Strikes Back, Terminator 2.
What do you think?
Oh, man. Godfather 2. I'm going with Godfather 2. Those good options all the way around. I'd almost feel better like arguing about worst sequel, like because I can have a better conversation about that.
The worst sequel?
Caddyshack 2.
Speed 2 was number one.
Speed 2.
Speed 2. I forgot about that. They did that.
I did.
You did not. Thanks for the call. Thanks very much. Chris Mannix. Thanks, Chris. You take care. We'll chat soon, hopefully with more information as conditions warrant, with an actual return of basketball. That would be great.
You got it, Rich.
You got it. That's Chris Mannix.
No Keanu in
By the way, hold on a minute.
right?
I've got the line of the day. I've got the line. By choosing The Godfather Part 2 as the winner, he says, leave the con, take the cannoli. Thank you very much.
Wow. Again, I don't know.
I don't know why I'm so proud of myself.
I don't know what's worse.
Leave the con.
That or the way how you
Take the
snuck
cannoli.
in an Ohio State jab at the end.
Let's hit them all now while we got the money.
Thank you, one Francis Pantangeli.
Wow.
Who did not like the Rosado Brothers C-Note.
No.
How do you not take God? But Empire Strikes Back is winning,
Pretty
huh?
good movie. Yeah, Empire Strikes Back, 43% to 36%. You better press your thumb on the scale here, pal.
By the way, speaking of Hoosiers, I think...
Are we doing it?
I think I've got a possibility for a guest for tomorrow's program.
Okay.
Because we've been talking Hoosiers and Rudy like crazy, and I think we can pull this off tomorrow.
Okay.
What the This is next. As well as 844-204-RICH. Ton of phone calls. That's next on The Rich Eisen Show. You see stuff that's on the walls here when you walk in. There's a Goodfellas poster that I've had forever.
Really?
Yes.
Where'd you get it?
I got it at a charity auction.
Huh.
You've taken it off the wall.
Yeah, it's not my signature.
What do you mean it's not your signature?
This is not my signature, buddy.
Down there?
You got ripped off.
No, I did not. You're kidding me.
I don't do a frou-frou L like that. And
So-
I don't cross it.
So that is
Like
not
that.
yours, because it's signed by you, De Niro, and Pesci, and I spent at least 4 figures on this thing.
Get out of here.
Yes.
You're a sucker. I mean, I could sign it for real.
Yeah.
At least I could double it.
Do it. Do what you wish. If that is, do you know if that's Pesci's? Do you know if that's Joe's?
No, that's him.
No, I know that's him.
I know.
You sure?
No, we'll take care of it later, Rafi.
Yeah. What do you got? He's got an axe. Are you serious?
Do you want the real?
Yeah, sure. But you know, I mean,
it's gonna hurt the.
Okay. You're.
Oh no, it doesn't. Oh, that's me.
There's you just
I
smacked
gave
yourself
myself
in
a
your
heart attack. We'll do it later.
Okay.
That's not me.
Yeah, you just banged yourself. You just cracked the glass. So we could take it out, smash the glass. I mean, you got that at this point.
No, it's not glass. It's not really glass.
It's like a plexi.
But we'll do it. We'll fix it.
Okay.
But you got ripped off.
Wow. Oh, my gosh.
How are you feeling now, Rich? Knowing this
He's holding on to the axe.
All right, so ask me a question.
Oh my gosh! You put the axe down. This is fantastic. I don't even know where to go with this because that has been one of my most prized possessions for some time, and you are the real McCoy saying that it's not your signature.
Yeah, no, it's not. I initialed it to make it.
Yes, right for Gazy, and then we're done. Welcome back to the Rich Eisen Show. 1982 on this day. The greatest sequel in the history of science fiction film.
Rich.
Come on.
Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
Khan.
Now, can you put the graphic up one more time, please? Excellent choices by our staff here on the Rich Eisen Show. For The Godfather Part 2, you've got Michael Corleone looking like Michael Corleone, right? You got, for Turner, T2 Judgment Day, I love the Arnold. We could have gone with our friend Robert Patrick, right? Could have, but that's a great choice.
Of course.
Empire Strikes Back, that is a very moving scene when Skywalker, when Luke and Darth are going at it like that. I mean, that is a great film, a great movie in its
From the beginning.
own right. Great movie. But the choice of the still for Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan, we could go with Khan himself, Ricardo Montalban, best known for being Mr. Rourke from Fantasy Island, also telling you about the Corinthian leather of the great Chrysler Cordoba, right? If you remember that back in the day. Fans of the Naked Gun film will remember he was the heavy. He was the criminal in that film. But instead, we went with William Shatner in, let's not forget, too, in all of his, at the time, T.J. Hooker glory right there. Look at that, okay? And he's screaming the word Khan because Khan buried him alive on a planet. And we could go on and on and on about this film. But it was just to take an actual Star Trek episode, to take a real Star Trek episode. Just... The name of the show is my name. Give me a few seconds here.
You're going to keep going.
Give me a few seconds here.
This is the Rich
Thank
Eisen
you.
Show.
Hey, rock on, man.
To take an actual episode from the original Star Trek, the Gene Roddenberry Star Trek.
Yes.
To take that and use that as an idea for a sequel for the film. And do that. Genius. Genius. Ricardo Montalban at his finest. And I said those words without a hint of irony.
Cordoba.
Thank you.
Cordoba.
How did you have the Cordoba as a drop? That's impressive. I'm pounding the table. And Don Bowie, our Grand Poobah producer, is saying aliens should be on that list. And he asked for an actual secondary poll question of aliens versus Khan. And I said, do not underestimate the Trekkies out there in the Twitterverse.
Well, 31% like Wrath of Khan better. That means, of course, We do the math for you here. 69% like aliens.
I don't
Nice.
understand what's going on in this world. Now, again, before we get back to the real stuff in the world and your phone calls at 844-204, as you know, we have been talking about sports movies here quite a bit and about my sincere distaste for the film Rudy.
Oh, such a great film.
Again, because I put my Michigan Wolverine helmet in front of me. I bleed maize and blue as if Notre Dame has a monopoly on warm and fuzzy stories of guys who overcome, physical and also, just overcome the odds. And also about greatness in football.
Not untrue.
And I understand I'm on NBCSN here, and Notre Dame is an important school to this organization, and I just say it's crap. Well, the conversation also involved Hoosiers because I say that's the greatest sports movie of all time. Right. And, there was, was that Le Batard show? Our friend Dan Le Batard show? Talked about
Horace
this.
Sedano.
That's right. Saying that Hoosiers is just as worse as Rudy, and I have a big issue with that. And I used a lot of Rich Eisen show real estate on this subject matter.
Indeed.
Well, the director of Hoosiers is the same director of Rudy. Same director. Both movies written by the same guy. David Onspad, the director.
Two amazing movies
Angelo
he directed.
Pizzo, the writer.
Yep.
I got a call from David Onspad.
Wait, you did?
Yes.
Oh, gosh.
He and the rest of all of the crew, I guess, a.k.a. Angelo Pizzo, they heard it. They watched it. They saw it.
And?
I think he would like to come on tomorrow's show to talk about it. Because a certain member of the film, Rudy, whose story the film was based on his story. Apparently,
You're the guy in the movie poster?
this gentleman, whose life story the film was based on him, apparently he saw what I had to say. And Rudy would like to come around the edge and take my ass out, just like he did, allegedly.
We'll carry him off the field.
There's no allegedly. Yeah, we have the video.
We have the video. It exists.
He recorded a sack.
So I'm gonna, we'll see if we can get David to call in tomorrow to have this full-on conversation.
That could be fun.
Settle down just a little
Thank you,
bit.
Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Jerry.
All right, let's go back to the phone lines here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's go to Newton in Virginia. It called 2482. Call the program. What's up, sir?
Rich, let's settle down just a little bit.
What's going on in your mind, Newton?
Oh, listen, this is, to say these are unique and unprecedented times in some ways is good and accurate, in some ways isn't. My perspective comes from having grown up in a black neighborhood throughout my life and seen the things that go on, both good and bad, and having realized just how much white privilege I've had, which kind of sounds, when I hear myself say it, it's weird, but it's true, and so I have to take accountability for that. But the two things that I wanted to say is, one is I believe that the answer is not only education, but numbers. Just like Anquan said, we've got to get more people involved in widespread voting and political education to understand who the people are. And not only that, but to go out and inspire and recruit the right people to run, because they're out there now. But they see what goes on, and who wants to be a part of that when you know that you don't stand a chance individually and that greed is currently in the lead. So you can't get people to do it unless you have more numbers. And the education process has to be there, because public education, while I'm a product of it and feel pretty stout academically, it has a failure to it that it teaches more individuality than how to make your individuality fit into the whole of the common good without sounding communist about that with common good. So in our lifetime, we may not see it, but we have the responsibility that the other generations before us didn't take which is passing that on so that we can make this go away, because it is the single biggest thing that's held us back, and our history has created some comeuppance that we just simply have to deal with.
Newton?
And for Mr. Brees,
Yes.
I have to say he's too intelligent for me to buy into what he said. I want to believe him, but what I know is this. I know that you can know somebody the majority of your life and still not really know them. I can't tell you the many times I've heard my contemporaries say, well, yeah, I've got black friends, but you know what? He's not like most of them. And so and so they have black friends and they pretend to be solid about it, but in their heart, they are not. And I don't think that many of us are 100%. And that's why we need the newer generations to take this further.
Newton, thank you for the call. Appreciate that. Well, one person who has bought Drew Brees' apology was Michael Thomas, who tweeted out that Drew's apologized and back to the movement is what he said, and referred to Drew as his brother. Anquan Boldin was on last hour. He, along with Malcolm Jenkins, founded Players Coalition. And I encourage you to go to players-coalition.org to find out about the action items they would like many of us, all of us, to take by calling city halls and state houses and Capitol Hill and say, this is the stuff that we need to have put into legislation. This is the stuff we need removed from contracts that the cities across our country, municipalities, have with police unions. This is the action items, and I invite you to go do the check all that out. He is a busy man and said that he had not heard Drew Brees' comments. He had heard of them. And I told him that Brees had apologized for his comments. I played the comments for him because he had not heard them. And then, again, reiterated that Brees had apologized for him and asked him what he would tell Drew Brees if he was in his locker room or virtual Zoom meeting on this day.
First off, if I were in that locker room, I would tell Drew, unfortunately, you have not been listening at all to what your brothers in the locker room have been saying. And you're trying to tell a group of people how they should handle the injustices that have been happening to them since the beginning of this country. And that's disheartening, and it makes you wonder, are you really about trying to bring about change, or do you just want things to be comfortable in the way that you do them?
And, I'll reiterate what I said at the top of the program. That to me was my, sincere disappointment. And I know that's the phrase that you hear so many politicos say, I'm disappointed, I'm distressed. Look, I was beyond patently totally disappointed that Brees said what he said, not because he doesn't have a right to say it. Of course he does. He has a right to believe it. He's a right. We, stand up, stand at attention, hand over heart. That's the way I stand for the national anthem. That's the way my wife does. That's the way we as parents tell our children, please stand. But we're also telling them, if that person's kneeling, this is why. We will never say, you should never agree with this person. As Brees felt his initial reaction to being asked yesterday, what happens when people kneel again, or do you expect people to kneel again? What will the NFL do? And that was his reaction. And to say you never will agree with somebody who doesn't stand for the national anthem means you didn't hear the conversation from 3 years ago. And he has since apologized for that. And I'm thrilled to read it and see it. And I believe it. I believe he is very sincere in apologizing. But that's part of the reason why we had Nate Boyer on earlier today, because he was the Green Beret who suggested to Kaepernick back in 2016 when this all started to do the kneeling. And do you have that as part of your news update, Chris Brockman?
Indeed.
Let's get to that right here on The Rich Eisen Show.
And now, with a report of the day's news from the world of sports and entertainment, Someone who is not a journalist or newsman by any definition of the word whatsoever. It's Chris Brockman.
You know, we've rarely had a chance where we play that, and it really doesn't kind of fit the news that we've done. But we still appreciate Tom Brokaw.
Every single time.
NBC News Emeritus.
Much appreciated.
Okay,
so
and again, we'll take some of your phone calls too. So if you're on hold, stay on hold. What do you have over there, Christopher?
Let's do it. Let's play what Nate had to say from hour one.
We've seen plenty of signs and symbols throughout our history of, I guess you can call it dissent. You know what I mean? We look back on those things and we're like, wow, that was powerful. You know, what a brave thing to do. Yet in this moment, at this time, for whatever reason, like a lot of people, they just don't want to accept that this is that person's truth, and what this person is trying to do is not a bad thing, not a wrong thing. It's all about, it's a patriotic thing, you know, and that's a scary word nowadays too. But it's a patriotic thing to do that, not just because we have the right to protest, but because what's behind that is a belief and a feeling that this country can do better, and that we can be more unified, and then we can be more equal, and that everyone can feel the same type of opportunities that I feel.
Talking about kneeling and protesting.
Yeah, and how it's patriotic.
I would like everybody to just, again, go to our YouTube feed to see the entire conversation from our first hour. He suggested to Kaepernick to kneel instead of sit, and now you're seeing this protest across the country and across the world of people stopping and kneeling down. It really is truly remarkable. Truly is remarkable. And that's Nate's avatar right now, is him standing at attention, hand over chest next to Kaepernick kneeling. That was the first night that he suggested to Kaepernick. That's, you could see the background right there. Charger fans will recognize it. That's the old Qualcomm, San Diego, where it was a military appreciation night. And if you could see, Nate Boyer is standing with his band of brothers in a theater of war that he was in several times. He's just a unique person at the crossroads of all of this, and I suggest everybody listen to that conversation. What else do you have over there, Christopher?
Yeah, we're going to hear from Russell Wilson here. He met with reporters yesterday on a video conference call, and it was supposed to be about football, ended up not being so, and he spoke at length about what's been going on right now.
When you think about the idea of Black Lives Matter, they do matter, and the reality is that me as a black person, people are getting murdered on the street. People are getting shot down, and the understanding that, it's not like that for every other race. It's like that in particular, for the black community. And, I think about, my stepson. I think about, my daughter. I think about our new baby boy on the way. And it's kind of staggering. It's staggering to watch these things happen right in front of our faces. And so I have a heavy heart right now. And I think, like I said, I don't have all the right answers or anything. And to be honest with you, I don't even want to talk about football right now. That's the thing, that I don't even know what that looks like down the road or anything else. And I think that none of that matters. I can't compare football to life and what black community is going through right now. And, what I think is right. I think that people should have the ability to peacefully protest and to be able to, express, their frustration, their hurt, and their pain.
Yeah, one more too.
Plus one.
Dolphins head coach Brian Flores wasn't scheduled to talk today, but ended up doing so and wanted to put the focus on George Floyd.
I mean, I think, like you said, what happened was, in a lot of ways a tragedy. And, and for me right now, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of anger, a lot of emotion, a lot of emotions. But, for me, I just want to make sure that the spotlight is on George Floyd and, the horrible murder that occurred. And that, we focus on George Floyd, his family, and justice for the Floyd family.
Yeah, Brian Flores is one of the first members of the NFL community to actually speak send out a statement. And I am in full-throated support of both of those gentlemen we just heard from, Russell Wilson and Brian Flores. I mean, I just wanted to bring to you different points of view, and again, action items. Let's make a difference. Let's work on making a difference. And in that regard, I'm willing to have a conversation. I know that I'm looking down right now. All of our phone lines are lit, and there's a lot of people with a lot on their minds. And it's about everything that we talk about here. It's about life. It's about sports, pop culture. So let's take a break. Let's put our ducks a little bit in a row, and then we'll come back and return here on this show with your calls at 844-204-RICH. Let's take the call from Matt in Indiana, who's been wanting to talk for quite some time. Let's take your call, Matthew. What's up, sir?
Hi, Rich. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for hanging on.
Yeah, for sure. 60150, as I'd say on Dan's show.
Okay, very
good. Thanks.
Did you say you're 6 foot, 150 pounds? Is that what you said?
60150.
Oh my God, what do you eat?
Just regular, just regular stuff.
That's impressive. My
just
God.
like,
Yeah.
Thanks. I appreciate you being on NBCSN every day. It means a lot.
Appreciate that.
My question is, I actually had two. First of all, I'm glad the NBA is coming back. My questions are: do you think this play-in tournament? Do you think it'll be implemented in seasons to come? And then, secondly, who do you think will benefit the most from this suspension?
Hey, I think you'll see the teams that are I guess, what do you say? Does it really benefit anybody? The only one who would benefit is like the Wizards if Wall comes back and he would never have been able to play, right? Like that sort of thing. And in terms of the future, I would say this, that this play-in tournament may be so popular.
Yes.
And then the following season, when it begins in December, may have so many people watching it because of how it plays out. And then when fans hopefully are allowed back in, and then the season ends in like August, and the whole country will be watching in August because, the only other sports that's going on, if we just want to talk normalized action again, that it's just post All-Star Game baseball, if anybody cares about it, if they blow off the 2020 season because they couldn't figure out money, and waiting for football to open up in training camps. I think the NBA might just say, let's do this way from now on.
Yeah, that'd
both
be fun.
things.
I love it.
And thank you for the call, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for what you said about us on NBCSN. Maybe both things will stick. But
I look at the Nets at the 7 seed. I know they said they're not
Durant's
coming back.
No.
What if Kyrie and Durant just
Show up.
Just stroll in.
Like the Monstars.
I mean, come on.
All right, we're back in a second. Podcast1.com/Rich Eisen is how you can get our podcast all 3 hours every single day, just from start to finish. And we've had a heck of a day, I guess, to use the Jimmy V phrase, right? Where we've laughed, we've cried, we've got all the emotions in. We've had a heck of a day.
A heck of a day.
We just haven't, I remember his speech. Just haven't put our toes in the grass. A heck of a day. Let's go to our phone lines here. Thomas in Vermont's been hanging on for well over an hour. What's up, Thomas?
Hello. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller, and I'm a Corona refugee from Shanghai living in Vermont.
Okay.
And so I just wanted to bring an interesting perspective to what's been happening for the last week all around our country. 31 years ago today was the Tiananmen Square incident. And so for everything that Colin Kaepernick is doing for fighting for, black rights and oppression, and Nate Boyer standing by him and fighting for those rights, the rights we have can be taken away at any moment if we don't fight for them. So, and the other thing, living in Shanghai for the past 6 years, and I apologize, I'm very nervous.
No, take your time. Don't worry.
Living in China for the last 6 years has made me love my country even more. And I support everything that the protesters are fighting for right now, minus the violence with the looting and the rioting, but what they stand for. And also the fact that it hits me hardest knowing that George Floyd had a daughter that he is never going to be able to raise and turn into a woman. And I haven't been able to see my daughter in 5 months. So that, just this whole thing kind of stirs my emotions. And I just wanted to give sort of a little bit of a different perspective, from as an American living abroad.
Thomas, I appreciate you hanging in there on the phone and then hanging in there even though you said you were nervous. You stuck the landing. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. And in terms of George Floyd's daughter, did you see one of the most moving moments over the last week was Stephen Jackson turning to her and then turning to his daughter's mother and saying, "Don't you worry, I'll be there for her. I'll walk her down the aisle."
Yeah, that was.
I saw that. I retweeted that. That kind of got me all.
Yeah, me too.
Verklempt. Let's go to Manny in El Paso, Texas, one of our regulars. What's up, Manny?
Gentlemen, greetings from El Paso. How are we all doing today?
We're better for talking to you again. How's everything there in El Paso? Beautiful city.
Can't complain. We're still here.
Great.
Just right away, gentlemen, thank you for being able to share your feelings and for being the voice of reason. But not making light of the situation. If people are going to argue, let's argue about the right things. Let's argue about movie franchises now.
Okay, well, that's our poll question for the day, Manny. By the way, excellent segue. It's not an easy segue to do that, but well done, sir.
Thank you. I learned from the best. I watch you on TV.
Okay. All right. Well, we got the graphic up here to support you on our poll question. The best movie sequel since this day in 1982, the greatest sequel in the history of science fiction films. Came out.
Science fiction films. I was upset that Superman 2 wasn't listed after they talked about it yesterday.
Yeah, we did.
So that would have been my check. That would have been my check mark.
All right.
But
okay,
I do like Star Trek for the reason that Gene Roddenberry is from my fair city of El Paso, Texas, as well.
Did not
so I give
know
it
that.
Points for that.
I did not know that. And all the Star Trek shows are about unity, man. They're about the whole universe needing to come together, knowing that we're all different beings, different. Klingons are different from humans and all that, but we should all get together. It's a beautiful, beautiful sensibility, Star Trek's.
There it is. Now, the thing that kind of diminishes Star Trekkies is the fact that they argue amongst themselves on who's a better captain, Picard or Shatner or Kirk in this point.
Right.
And two, Star Wars is a bit better for 2 words, lightsabers.
Okay. Thank you for the call.
Thank you very much.
All
you guys
right.
have a good day.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Be good, brother.
Lightsabers. Come on. Put the phasers on stun. There were no lightsabers. The phasers were before lightsabers. Come on now.
Forgot the
even though I understand that the sabers are in a galaxy. I understand it was a long time ago in a galaxy far away. I might be off in the chronology of it, but in terms of pop culture, phasers, there are no lightsabers without phasers. And I understand that when the phasers shot, it wasn't nearly. We're talking the 60s. I understand there's no CGI. Here's the thing about Star Trek. Here's the thing about Star Trek.
4% for Wrath of Khan. 4%.
Rich,
I've been taking some serious L's
I told
lately.
you the double header. You lost your top pitchers.
Side poll: Aliens or Wrath of Khan? Aliens. 70%.
What do people know?
Oh, it's you lost. You lost, boys.
People know.
Boys.
I mean, wait till we have the Rudy director tomorrow.
I think I got to make sure David Onspach's available
so
to do
good.
that. But he seemed when I told him, I'm like, you got to come on my show and tell all these stories, and I think he's ready to do it. I'll just headline. Spoiler alert: the real Rudy is really pissed at me.
He should be, because you're making fun of my school, my team.
He's really pissed at me.
Was it Papa Quad or Terry? Which one was it?
I watch Rudy hoping that he does Papa Quad.
Yes. He said,
but again,
you
look,
said
I'm a Michigan man.
5 foot nothing.
Yeah,
100 and nothing.
I understand.
And
that.
then at the end,
come on, we're slow clapping.
Yeah, like that guy really existed. Stop. The real slow clap is Lucas, too. I mean, if you really want to talk about sports movies and slow claps.
Lucas. I forgot him.
I watched too many games from this stadium.
Or movies and slow claps. Wow. All right, let's go back to real life here. Leroy in Mississippi. You there, sir?
Rich, can you hear me? How you doing?
I am hearing you now. I hope you are well today. I am well for talking to you.
Good, man. Just a couple points, man. I'd like to, tip the hat to you for opening up your personal side. I think that gives a personal feel to your show and what you're talking about. Secondly, I remember the shut up and dribble situation when it came out, and you made a point today that it's okay for Drew Brees, but it's not okay for Kaepernick or LeBron. If you don't understand the situation, all you have to do is look at that statement. That should explain.
Right? I mean, come on. It's
that should explain the whole thing.
It's as if we don't have memories. It's as if we don't have video. It's as if we're idiots. I mean, again, you're referring to Laura Ingraham, who I knew. I met her back. I forget what year, but when I was still working at ESPN. One of the smartest people I ever come across. So I don't know who I'm watching whenever I see again. But here's the thing: is Brees does have the right to say what he feels. He does have the right to say what he means, and so does LeBron and Kevin Durant. And two guys are told to shut up and dribble, and another guy's, he's got a point to make. Let's hear it. Come on. Come on.
If you don't understand the situation, that sums it up right there. And last point.
Yes.
As an African American, as someone who's in the coaching profession, it's getting to a point now to where you see all these different people that have tweeted about the situation.
Mm-hmm.
They're catching heat, and now they issue an apology, and they try to walk it back, and that's supposed to be okay. I just think at some point those things have got to go away as well. I take the Clemson incident because I'm in the college football world. For that to, I said it. It was wrong then. It's wrong now. I apologize. Is that supposed to be it? I mean, are we supposed to be okay with that? You can, carry on. Everything's fine because you apologize. No, but you said it. So there's a reason you said it. And I think those things all tie into what the bigger issue is.
Well, and
stand how you stand.
Well, I guess
that's fine.
I guess, and just to put a point on it if we can, maybe again, and I know Anquan Boldin said he's done having conversations, but on certain fronts, but maybe a conversation needs to be had within locker rooms, within, I guess, cafeterias once those, come back into being, and having a hash it out and say, this is the way I feel. Why do you feel that way? Oh, you feel that way? Well, here's my response to that. And let's all come together and win football games or win basketball games or win, together. I don't think that sounds pie in the sky ideal. I think that is just flat out ideal. That's all, right?
And it makes sense. I think everybody comes together for your cause when you run the 40. White, black, brown, yellow, green, all indifferent because it's a great cause.
Well, they
so
also admire the athleticism. Don't forget that. Okay. What's so funny about that?
I mean, and then we'll tie that back into the Rudy situation.
No! Thank you for the call. Thanks for the call. There you go. What's so funny when I say I'm athletic? As you know, Doozy was helping tie my shoes.
I mean, we can get you some Velcros if you need them.
But my coach, at one point, I make a good shot, and he goes, I'm going to say something here, and don't take this the wrong way. I know how you might take it. And I'm like, what? And he goes, that was athletic. That looked athletic. And I'm like, well, then what about the rest of everything?
Rich, I never heard that when I was a kid, so.
What about the rest of everything? If this is the only time you say it.
You got it once.
Now you've got to say it more.
Be happy. You got to do more athletic things, I guess. I don't know.
That's why I'm here behind this board.
Hey.
I looked athletic. Yeah, you know what? You stink.
I wish they had told me that. I just sat on the bench. Del Tufo, you're the bat boy.
I want to thank Nate Boyer. I want to thank Anquan Boldin. Again, I know he doesn't do it very often, and he's an important voice. He has an important voice in our society, and certainly in the world of sports in our society. And I appreciate him calling in players-coalition.org for more. Vetsandplayers.org for more on Nate Boyer's organization, and Chris Mannix as well. We're excited to hear what the NBA is doing. We hope you have a happy and safe rest of your Thursday. We will see you on Friday's show, where we slow clap it out. We might talk a little bit of Rudy and Hoosiers. We'll see you then.